Did you not have any? I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Stites. Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Committee, we have an agenda tonight with 3 items on it. 2 of them action items, 1 of them for information only. So the first item of business this evening is it's an ordinance amending the code of ordinances related to disorderly conduct, definition of the drug paraphernalia and interference with law enforcement. And I will recognize staff from our legal department to make the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Casey Meyer, Senior Attorney from Legal. These are pretty simple amendments. The 2 bottom ones, definition of drug paraphernalia and interference with law enforcement, are both based off of legislative session amendments with our Kansas state statute. So those ordinances are being amended to be consistent with state statute. The first one, disorderly conduct, is based off of a Kansas Supreme Court case that just came out in 2024. So Griffey v. City of Wichita was a Kansas Supreme Court case that basically held the language that is redlined there in Section 3 to be unconstitutionally overbroad. That language, as it currently is unenforceable. And so this amendment is to just come into compliance with that Kansas Supreme Court ruling and be consistent with that law change. If there are no questions, I'm sorry, Commissioner. No, I think the way I drafted it, you can consider them all together. If I need to amend something, I can do that separately. Okay. Regarding section 22.314, the definitions section of our code, when I do these red lines, I just include the previous language so you have a point of reference. So of course, all the dark language is what we already have and is current. Again, this section was based off of, any changes in here is based off of legislative amendment and is codified in state statute. So the only changes for the only reason for these changes is to be consistent with state statute. So the first red line is just a very small, basically a grammatical change. The next section, you'll see they just changed some language. These aren't really very substantial changes as far as clarifying the language of phencyclidine, methamphetamine, or amphetamine when used with paraphernalia. And then some additional language in NOP. Again, all those things are just included in state statute. This section is the most substantive change. It specifically excludes any products, chemicals, or materials described in KSA 215709, or any materials used or intended for use to test a substance for the presence of fentanyl, a fentanyl analog, ketamine, or GHB. So you're probably familiar with fentanyl test strips. Those are used frequently to see if someone's overdosing or if they have a substance that might have fentanyl, so they know not to use that. The state legislature decided to decriminalize that. Those used to be considered drug paraphernalia. And so our state legislature determined that they did not want that to be considered drug paraphernalia anymore. And so that is the reason for this change, be consistent with state statute. They're used for a medical. Oh, and then one more, I'm sorry, Commissioner. One last thing, again, section 22.346, this is interference with law enforcement. The legislature added a new section within the statute, which would also coordinate with our municipal ordinance, because this section is a misdemeanor. Section 4 there, knowingly fleeing from a law enforcement officer other than fleeing by operation of a motor vehicle when a law enforcement officer has reason to stop the person and has given the person visual or audible signal to stop. That's to cover those situations when somebody is on foot or maybe on a bicycle. So that wouldn't be relevant for someone in a car because that's eluding. So, and that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Committee questions? Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, that, those strips,
Yes.
was that page, whatever, section 22-314. Do those have fentanyl in it? Does it have some kind of drug paraphernalia in that strip?
Previously, because they could be used to technically ingest, they considered them drug paraphernalia.
Or it actually has drugs in it? Is that what you're saying?
What-
So this is to, people can test. So if they have, I mean, if they're a user of drugs, they can test it and see whether there's fentanyl in it so that it reduces the risk of overdose, accidental overdose, for people that don't know that there's fentanyl in their drugs. So it was an item that was actually in the UG's legislative agenda over the last couple of years, and the state legislature adopted that language in the last session to allow for those test strips without the penalty of prosecution for just the simple possession of those strips. So it's a public health measure to try and reduce fentanyl.
Okay, so
Overdose.
like if somebody's trying to get high off a joint or heroin or whatever, and like, I want to make sure there's not heroin or there's not fentanyl in there, so I want to just test it.
Right.
Good thinking.
It was considered an illegal device to have in possession because associated to the drug trade. Legislative action made it a medical exception basically for testing of fentanyl.
Right.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk if there were any comments received from the public.
No comments were received.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online from the public who wishes to make a comment.
No hands are raised.
Thank you. Is there anyone appearing in person who would like to address this item? Let the record show no one stepped forward. Thank you, committee. That takes us to the action portion of this motion. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Stites. Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Casey. That takes us to item number 2. It's a resolution approving Community Corrections Fiscal Year 2024 report. And this is our last action item for the evening. And so I know that we will have staff member from our Community Corrections Department to make the presentation just as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. I'm Phil Lockman, Department of Community Corrections. These two reports tonight, one adult, one juvenile, are really kind of very unique reports. They're specific to the Department of Corrections. We're reporting on over the last year our work towards working on evidence-based practices, things like that, and policy and procedure updates through the year. It's not very interesting reading, and the way it's formatted for them, they do it in an Excel spreadsheet. So the only two ways to actually view this document is either with font so small that you can't read it, or it's split over 20 pages. So it's not an easy thing to read, but in fact, it's just a capitulation of the steps we've taken towards ensuring that we're doing what we're supposed to do throughout the year. And the Department of Corrections requires this of us every year. Basically, the adult side, we receive about $1.9 million. And on the juvenile side, about $4.2 million. And so this is just part of that process that we need to report to them. But in essence, there's nothing in there besides just the details of our fundamentals of evaluating procedures and policies and making sure we're in compliance with state law and the Kansas Department of Corrections. But if there's specific questions I could answer, I could do my best.
Committee, any questions? Commissioner Burns?
Bill, I see where with all the data you put here, it's from July 1st, 23 through June 30th of this year, right? Okay. And I see that you approved the data on July 18th, and then Judge York also
Yes.
signed that she was with the community or the advisory board, and they signed off it. My question only is this, I don't question what's in there. This is being asked to fast track it tomorrow. I mean, Thursday, excuse me. Is there any way that you couldn't have done this in August?
It's tough in that it includes information that goes up through June and we have to wait on some information coming from the Department of Corrections. It's not due until October 1st or 15th, I think, but we do our best to try to get it in there and get it going. But sometimes we're waiting for information from providers, third-party providers, or the state to get the information together.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Bill, the report's not a bad report. Honestly, the only question I'd have is in the January to March, it was identified that there was 3 vacated ISO and 1 ISO on military leave. Are you staffed back now?
Well, we're getting there. You know, the Department of Corrections both encompasses adult, juvenile services, our program services, which does our drug courts and behavioral health courts, cognitive education and trial services. We've been pretty lucky as far as our staffing. And we're right now, I think we have about 5 openings, but that's a lot better than we were a few years ago. We were hurting big time. And so I feel pretty lucky now. But we've just got the same problem that a lot of departments and private businesses have, is just trying to not only get and hire these young kids, but to keep them. And that's the thing, is to keep them past that year or two and they move on to something else. But I think we're doing pretty good right now on our hiring.
And I don't want to do any fear mongering, but this is for low level probationers too, and not for your more high level felony crimes.
Yeah, well, community corrections, generally speaking, on the adult side, it's for lower risk offenders. We don't get the real, what would be classified as violent, high-risk offenders. It sometimes happens through the process of plea bargaining and plea charging that goes on through the judicial process. But generally speaking, our folks are mostly drug, property crimes, but there are a few people that sneak in there with weapons violations and batteries and battery of an LEO and things like that.
Well, thank you. And committee, before I will ask I'll ask staff, is there, if there's no more questions for the committee, I'll ask clerk if there's any comments received from the public.
No comments were received.
I'll ask the clerk if anyone online from the public wishes to make a comment.
No hands are raised.
Thank you. Is there anyone appearing in person this evening that would like to address this item? Let the record show no one stepped forward. Committee, if there's I would entertain a motion, but the motion is, there's a request that this item be fast tracked to the September 26th, 2024 Board of Commission meeting. So if there's a motion made, that should include that language. Commissioner Stites.
Heights District 7. So when is it due again, sir?
In October.
After October 3rd?
Yeah.
So we have a commission meeting on October the 3rd. And the only reason that I'm bringing this up is that I know that it's in the past, we don't like things that we get, 2 days or a short time before our next meeting, when there's a lot of information that needs to be reviewed and looked at. And then, of course, you just named that there's 20 pages. So my question would be, what would be the reason that we couldn't just approve it and it go on the October 3rd commission meeting if that meets your deadlines?
If that's what the standing committee wants to do, that's fine.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Want to make sure I understood the motion, Commissioner Stites, and the second, and that's to not fast track it, but to take it to the October 6th meeting? October 3rd meeting. Thank you. Council, administration, that's, got that message? Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the item, but advance it to the October 3rd full commission meeting. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Stites. Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. That takes us to item 3. Tonight, it will be a information only meeting. There will be no action taken on this. And this is the approving of the EPA change grant and approving memorandum of understanding with Central Betterment Association per the agenda update. But as I stated, this grant is in the amount of $20 million and authorizing a member of understanding with the Central Avenue Betterment Association. There are no matching funds required for this $20 million grant, but as I stated, we will be taking no action this evening. This will be for information only. So as soon as staff is situated to have the discussion, we will start. And I will recognize staff from our Public Works Department to make the presentation. Welcome.
Good evening. First off, introduce myself, Jeff Miles. I'm the Director of Water Pollution Control. And we do have team members here with us, not only from our team, that's Sarah Schaefer to my left, as well as Black and Veatch and I always back that up. CIS. I always say it's back way. CSI, we're building the CSI building, so I always get that backwards. But we're going to go over, I wanted to start it off. I know there's a lot of questions about this topic, but I wanted to give a little bit of background. Sarah and the team, you know, we're always tasked with trying to turn over every possible rock for grant opportunities. This opportunity came, she worked with Black and Veatch with this to move this forward. And I think this presentation is going to give you a lot of answers that you might have questions. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to hold your questions, if possible, to the end. And we welcome any kind of guidance, questions, suggestions, because again, as Commissioner Burrows said, this is for informational only tonight. I did want to touch on, just as a reminder of what this, when I look at it from a director's role, we are under a 25-year consent decree that you guys hear a lot, north of $900 million in investments. And really the ultimate goal of that consent decree, there's many facets of that consent decree, but one of the biggest things is separation of CSOs throughout our community. Our biggest really offender of that is CSO 55, which we're going to talk about tonight, as well as some funding opportunities. This EPA grant that we're going to touch on is, we're not competing against other municipalities with this, but it is open for other opportunities. Just as an example, KCMO is going after the same maximum of $20 million as well. So there's a maximum of 20 million, a minimum of 10 million. We believe with our needs here in our community, we're going to fit a lot of the criteria of that 20 million and put us in a really good position to qualify that if we so wish to pursue that. When I say 20 million is the total request. Again, it's no matching to that. 19.5 would go towards the project and community outreach efforts. And then there's a $500,000 part of that will go over some other projects and programs that you'll see in this presentation as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sarah Schaefer. She's going to take it from there.
Thank you, Jeff. Sarah Schaefer, Senior Engineer, Public Works. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to bring this item to standing committee here about and ask us questions. So part of some of our background, as Jeff mentioned, we're in a 25-year consent decree. We know and speak of that as the IOCP. So a little bit of overview on that. As well as some proposed grant opportunities. And so initially we're eligible to submit for 2 with our community. We've identified the CSO projects. Tonight we're here. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with the presentation. It just zoomed in. Thank you. So we've identified 2. Literally not pressing buttons. One moment, please, while we get our technical difficulties figured out. Big middle one, and that goes forward, right? And then the smaller one down goes backwards if I accidentally press the forwards one, just making sure. You know, sometimes you just got to get a little tutorial on the 3-button mechanism. So here we go. So we've identified 2 fundamental IOCP projects that would meet this criteria. We're here to talk about CSO 55. CSO 19 will be an October request for agenda that you'll see in the future. So to go through some of our funding, so if we can kind of think about CSO 55. As part of our CSO control measures, CSO 55 is a project that is identified for sewer separation and green infrastructure to provide wet weather storage for 1.4 inches of rainfall. This is directly out of our table 2.1 in our integrated overflow control program, which was March 23 of 2020. So what does that mean to us really? So what that means is that we have 44 rainfall events, and 44 of those events in CSO 55 are released into the environment. Every single one of those rain events have an overflow happening. So what that equates to, 1.4 inches of rainfall, what that equates to is 35 million gallons of water needs to be addressed. 35 million gallons of water. So what does that mean? So thanks to staff, they gave me a little bit of an idea. 58 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's the volume of water that CSO 55 is looking to accommodate and achieve and keep out of our sewer system. So just a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. That particular budgetary line item is approximately $60 million in order to achieve that level of effort for that stormwater program. Currently, these projects are supported by UG ratepayers through the Enterprise Fund. Outside funding, when we look at it, what we're trying to do is make sure that that entirety, that 60 million is not at the full request of those ratepayers. So our EPA Community Change Grant is what we've identified with staff. I have Matt with Black & Veatch here to fully discuss. They are our funding partners, so we hire them to investigate funding and to ensure and look through it and find alignment in those that make the most sense.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the Change Grant tonight. As Sarah mentioned, Matt Scott with Black & Veatch. I'm a stormwater engineer, and we assist your stormwater program and CSO program in finding grant opportunities. It's an era where there is a lot of federal funding, and earlier this year when the Community Change Grant presented itself as an opportunity, we surfaced it to staff, and that's why we're here tonight. So some background on this program. EPA did receive $3 billion as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, $2 billion of which it set aside for the grant program we're discussing tonight, the EPA Community Change Grant Program. And the key objective of that program, as you'll see there, is to fund environmental justice and climate justice activities to benefit disadvantaged communities. So under that banner, what does that mean? In terms of grant benefits and goals, it aligns very well with UG goals and needs, especially for a CSO project. By nature, the CSO projects reduce pollution to the waterways of the unified government. And this is a grant program specifically to reduce pollution. So immediately there's good alignment. In addition to just reiterate what you've heard, this grant requires no federal match, and so it offsets the funding burden that is currently on ratepayers for projects that are required of the unified government to be constructed. So it's an immediate offset of the funding burden that's currently on ratepayers. There's no non-federal match required. This is very unusual in the grant funding space. This does not happen often. Usually some local match is required from local revenues. Awards are between 10 to $20 million. The unified government is seeking $20 million, $19.5 million of which would go directly to implement CSO 55 measures to meet consent decree criteria. There would also be funding for concentrated community collaboration. So baked into the name of the program, Community Change Grant is the community. And there will be focused community-led collaboration with residents, stakeholders, business owners within the project area. And that will all be funded by the grant. There's also the opportunity for innovative and community-involved implementation. And what that means is finding opportunities to enhance local participation in the construction and implementation of this project. So not only will the community be helping to shape and guide the project as it moves forward in a community-led engagement way, but there will be enhanced local participation and economic opportunity. Grant requirements. The first notable thing is awards are being made on a rolling basis. So already a tranche of funding has been released in excess of $300 million of that $2 billion. So while there is some money left in the program, they are making awards, which adds urgency to the timeline. There's a final deadline of November 21st, 2024, but obviously a rolling award, getting in earlier is advantageous to being competitive. There's a 3-year period of performance, and so all activities proposed and funded by the grant would be completed within a 3-year window. And then finally, there's a requirement for the unified government to be in partnership with a statutory partner, and the grant application defines the unified government as an eligible applicant because it's a local government, but it cannot apply for this grant without a community-based organization, i.e. a nonprofit. And so just to be very clear, it requires that statutory relationship. That's not optional. Again, baked into the name of the application, community-based or a community grant. That does require an agreement, in this case, in the form of an MOU between the unified government, the local government as lead applicant, and the community-based organization who you'll hear from shortly. In the form of an MOU. These are basic terms that were required by the EPA. If you were to pull open the notice of funding opportunity, it would be part of the attachments to it. Eligible grant activities that are relevant to the CSO 55 project. They include generally under the headings of climate action, wet weather management and treatment. So you'll see discussion tonight of proposed surface stormwater treatment facilities. Mobility and transportation options. So being proposed as part of this application is a new trail that will provide a new mobility for pedestrian and cyclists, as well as serving as a maintenance path for maintenance of stormwater treatment facilities that are constructed. And then workforce development, which we'll hear about later in this presentation relative to providing economic opportunity in the award of implementation of the project. For pollution reduction, that it's required that the grant address pollution reduction. And as I mentioned, the nature of a CSO reduction project is pollution reduction. It promotes clean water infrastructure. And to be clear, all of the engagement, all of these activities will be grant funded. This is not a request for volunteer time. So in a moment, I'll hand it off to Sarah to speak about unified government responsibilities that are required by the grant. But why unified government for this application? There's no place in the state of Kansas where you have a nexus of pollution that has impacted the community, resulting in disinvestment of that community where there's the opportunity to fund a project of this scale that will be impactful to the community. The UG is in a unique situation within the state to be very competitive for this grant application. And so Sarah will speak to Unified Government's role, and then we'll hear from the statutory partner on their role.
Thank you, Matt. Sarah Schaefer, Public Works Senior Engineer. So as a lead applicant, there's a couple of responsibilities that we have to ourselves as well as to the grant. So for the grant, there's a drive for collaboration to create this application. So we're leading the application meetings, identifying scope that is in alignment with our infrastructure project, as well as scope that's in alignment with UG efforts, whether they be from the health department reports, whether they be from our infrastructure reports, et cetera. So UG would be the lead applicant, and part of that is upon award that they would also manage the grant funds and the schedule. Some of the UG absolute needs. CSO 55's absolute needs. So we have engagement, outreach, education, design, inspection, and construction. So these are all activities that are included in our infrastructure projects. The engagement, outreach, and education, which are typically facilitated by a consultant in this grant, it fosters that relationship and encouragement of having the community-based partner, the community neighborhood business association to be that facilitator. So that work has to be done regardless. Same way with the design. This would be the total design. So we would have a cohesive, community-engaged, community-led design. Our inspection activities upon a competitive awards of those construction components, and then the actual construction pieces. So phase one is what we're calling this particular grant application and the activities that it supports, which would be our surface water treatment facilities and those facilities that are engineered also. So of course, all design is an engineered design component with community input on how we make that look. Phases 2 and 3, that is also the design components of that. We will then have that design, which would make us potentially easier to go after additional construction only grants to help support that as well when we have a clear and defined design that is cohesive with meeting the metrics of the CSO criteria and our IOCP consent decree. All phases of this are required to meet the IOCP by 2032 in alignment with our other funding strategies. And what we, as a statute or as a lead partner on this particular thing, is to create and manage all sub-awards, and they would need to follow our UG and our federal procurement requirements. They would also need to follow any type of UG commission approval processes to include bringing packages back to standing committee for review and approval and direction. So what are some ideas of this particular space and level? So UG, first and foremost, our absolute necessity, and what was the reason that we are bringing this grant together to you for information and direction tonight, is our CSO 55 project. Again, it's a $60 million anticipated project to accommodate and to figure out what to do with 35 million gallons of water. Currently, this particular area identifies what the CSO 55 sewer shed basic boundaries is. We can see that trailhead at the bottom connects in with City Park, and it goes all the way up through to the headwaters of Jersey Creek, just below Parallel Parkway. So this is in a space where the overland flow brings it into kind of this alignment. So basic review or concept level of understanding where this water could be accommodated is in through this particular corridor. It's also right in, there's an old old trolley or above ground space. So it's kind of right as it flows. The green areas are where we've identified current UG-owned property or land bank property that is within the surface water waterways that may be eligible for rehabilitation and/or stormwater use. First and foremost, making sure that we use lands that's available, that the water naturally wants to go to, is great. And then as we create a healthier waterway, then we're able to see how those other properties line up if they're made more ready-build type of situation and sites. Co-led mobility efforts, so understanding mobility is in terms of getting people from one place to another. There's areas in through here that allow for a trail system, which we in stormwater look at as a maintenance trail. So to the public, it's a great space to get from point A to point B. For us, we need them in order to access our assets and continue the maintenance on them in the future. So that is the two areas that are the most important and why we're coming after this grant as it pertains to the CSO and our infrastructure needs. So moving on to our CSO 55 statutory partner, I'd like to introduce the Central Area Betterment Association.
Good evening. My name is Katie Ramirez Gonzalez, and I am the Partnership Funding Associate at Central Area Betterment Association. I'd like to start off by thanking the Standing Committee of Public Works for taking the time to let us present this project and inform the benefits that can come from this project to not only our community, but as well as Wyandotte County as a whole. I'd also like to also like to thank the unified government for sending a call of interest to Central Area Betterment Association as a statutory partner to this beneficial project that we enthusiastically responded to. Not only does this speak volume to the type of relationship that CABA has with the UG, but CABA has worked with UG since the beginning of CABA and the beginning of their MBR program. CABA was founded in 1977 and has partaken in the revitalization and beautification of Central Avenue and its local businesses. Our organization is built on the following pillars that are shown on the screen, those being leadership, community pride, business excellence, entrepreneurship, and healthy living. CABA's mission has been and will continue to be to improve the quality of life and economic development of the Central Avenue area and its territory of operation. CABA has been able to successfully hit each of these pillars of community development by creating a safe space for our events and programs. And I'd like to pass it on to my director, Edgar Galicia, to continue.
Edgar Galicia, Executive Director of Central Area Betterment Association. I am here to talk in consideration of a community that has suffered disinvestment for years. As the proposed statutory partner organization in this grant and initiative, our deliverables are strong in community engagement, these allowing for individuals and organizations. Okay. These allowing for individuals and organizations to have a voice in the outcomes of critical situations and changes or investments like these. The separation of rainwater from sewer water is a need. There's nothing about that. That's a need that we need to address. But the way this gets done needs to be community-based, community-directed. And so we're here to help and search for the input and participation of our community. Our experience and historical engagement allows us to deliver on that. As our participation is there to include the more than 9 neighborhood groups and organizations recognized in the area and allow them to be part of the decision-making, not just stand by. There are several areas where we can promote everything we do. the micro vision, the strategic planning, the historic partnership. That's a given, but the promoters of health and outcomes are part of the need and output of the community itself. In our community, I ask this honorable commission to allow us to continue delivering on our mission. The proposed investment will enhance the health outcomes of our community. I will be here to answer any questions you might have later on. Now I call on to the innovation partner to continue the presentation.
Thanks, Edwin. Good evening. Thank you to the committee for having us here. Todd Peterson with CIS. I'm a market director. The CIS is focused on workforce development and community engagement in the backdrop of stormwater and water infrastructure projects. The UG has been forward-thinking in its approach to meeting the consent decree requirements, which have include using an alternative delivery model through a community-based partnership. That community-based partnership is focused on ensuring that each dollar spent on infrastructure projects is cost-effective, competitively bid, and will provide the maximum value, which includes economic development of local small businesses. There is, within the consent decree requirements, which span 25 years, there is a real opportunity here to turn a regulatory mandate into an opportunity. So the first figure you see up there, the $85 million, of that number, $60 million is for CSO 55, which we're talking about tonight. The opportunity is threefold. One is to address infrastructure and environmental challenges that are required and mandated by the consent decree. The other is being able to perform workforce development, enhancing and developing local small and minority-owned businesses, and focus on revitalizing land bank properties for either cost-effective use for above-ground stormwater facilities or for future development. Some of the benefits of a community-based partnership is focused on the workforce development for small and local businesses, including a mentor protege program. The mentors in this case are established local construction leaders that are already in our community and assisting to lead the workforce development component. With that, those same recipients of the mentor protege program are going to be able to perform the long-term maintenance and operation of the projects. Through the mentor protege program and securing the workforce in order to maintain and operate these projects, we'll continue to use a standard competitive process in onboarding those teams. The forward-thinking community-based partnership approach the UG has chosen has a strong confluence with the EPA's focus in the community change grants. As a result, the UG is in a strong position to win this competitive, non-matching grant opportunity. CIS's community-based partnership approach with the UG exemplifies the grant requirements in our existing controls and experience with other federal funding requirements, which makes meeting deadlines and streamlining reporting requirements attainable. This grant will help complete a significant portion of this required project at no financial impact and allow the community-based partnership to enhance our workforce and land bank reclamation programming. Thank you.
Again, Jeff Miles, Director of Water Pollution Control. Thank you. That was very informative. A couple of just closing points on here I want to kind of expand on. Of course, reduce the burden on ratepayers for large consent decree projects. And I want to stress that if you remember when we finalized the consent decree and what we've experienced since then with inflation. So we're looking at every opportunity to lessen that burden of ratepayers in the future on any opportunity like this. Opportunity for enhanced community collaboration, which of course I really like this point. that not only the money would be awarded to the unified government for this project, but also the money stays here in our community, contractors, with partners within the community. Invest in community enhancements. And then the big one, I'm going to jump ahead, is pollution reduction. And that's what we talk about a lot at Water Pollution Control. The end goal, doesn't matter if it's CSOs, if it's wastewater treatment plants, if it's manholes, we're trying to reduce or increase the water quality that ultimately is delivered to our rivers. And we believe this project is obviously going to do that. And this is an innovative funding way of helping us reach that goal. And with that said, like I said, I'm sure this spurs a lot of questions. You've got everybody here. This is for informational only. But ultimately, we do have a deadline to meet in the future. But tonight is informational only. And I think the timeline there, Sarah, you want to go through that timeline? Just what is the deadline of submitting this grant?
So as a refresher, November 21st is the close of this program. It is on a first come, first serve. It is a rolling award, and based upon our meeting schedules, I guess, Alan, if we kind of backtrack that up to our meeting schedules. So this is an information only. We'll be bringing this this CSO 55 back to the standing committee in October. I don't have the 23rd, 28th. October 28th would be when it's been brought back to the standing committee, and then we would have that go through the November 7th commission meeting in order to meet the deadline of submittal.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just handing it off to you. If you have questions, any topics, we're here to look for guidance on how to move this forward in the future or mold this on any concerns that you guys might have and answer those questions.
Commissioner King, question.
I don't know why we would hold ourselves back. I don't know why we wouldn't pursue it right now. You know, and go as far as you can go and then come back and get the blessing, because I don't want us to stall and be behind somebody. We can apply for it now. I believe we should apply for it now to make sure you get it. So when you come back, you say, hey, we got it or something. But I think we need to push as hard and as fast and as forward as we can go.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Stites.
Stites, District 7. Jeff, what is, explain to me, what is an above-ground storage facility?
I will explain it in a very non-engineering type way, but I'm definitely going to hand this off to Sarah because she does a great job of that.
So stormwater can be managed in multiple ways. One is above ground. That can look like dry detention areas. It can look like green infrastructure is what some common terminology for it, but it's grasslands, prairie lands, water can flow through it, around it. It can also look like wet ponds. It can also look like short-term, they call them detention facilities. So when I was learning about them, I had to remember detention, you got to go home from, but retention, you never got to leave. So you have detention and retention facilities, but all of those are what are considered above ground. Underground facilities are storage tanks. So if you go past 8th Street Park right now, you'll see these very large yellow dome looking things. Those are underground storage facilities where you hold water under the surface of the ground. So what the top can look like is turf or low, very low, shallow root system type of flora and fauna type of situations. And then you have your standard typical gray infrastructure, pipes, additional storage facilities can be just gray underground, concrete lined spaces. We also have gray infrastructure that's water quality. They're baffle boxes, as I believe some of the terminology that you may have heard in the past, where we pass water through certain spaces and it takes out, the largest first. And then, I always think of it as a kid, when we were looking for those gold, like you go to the thing, it goes to the first screen, second screen, third screen. So that's something that's also an underground facility or a gray facility is some of the terminology that you would hear. But I hope that clarifies what above ground and below ground option.
Yes, it did. Thank you. So I want to ask, so I'm familiar with retention and detention ponds, and I don't like either one of them because what I don't like is the lack of maintenance that occurs once we put them in place. And I'm going to use some of the examples out at the Legends area, right? We put them in and they're forgot about. They're nice to say that this is what they're going to be, and they're going to have cattails and they're going to be mowed and they're going to be, what ends up happening is they're trash collectors. They, nobody maintains them until it's pushed to the point where somebody comes in there with a brush hog, and then they mow everything down and they turn the 1,000 pieces of trash into 10 million pieces of trash, right? So what is the plan, or what would be the plan for ongoing maintenance to make sure that these these above ground facilities would be maintained in a manner that we want to say is an attribute to our area?
I can appreciate that concern because that was one of my main concerns when I came on board in 2019, was just the lack of understanding what stormwater treatment facilities are, what their needs are, and how to fully integrate them into your asset management system. So luckily, these would be considered integrated into our stormwater management facilities. We are building a workforce to understand what stormwater treatment facilities are. Typically, we go out and we say, we need, an RFP for stormwater treatment management, assistance. And there's very, very few. We have approximately 3, I believe, in our entire metro area who understand and are capable of managing these, not just mowing them down, not just digging them up. Those are engineered soils under there. There's intention behind them. So we're building that education, that outreach. As CIS mentioned, one of their key components is building that education, that training, in order to have more competitive workforce out there to assist in maintaining that. Additionally, training our own folks. Mark, Mid-America Regional Council has begun to implement their training program for a certification of just understanding the basics to the implementation, how to plant and how to maintain stormwater treatment facilities. So I think it's a regional approach that we're taking, and Unified Government is leveraging all the tools that are coming out from all of our partners to include our own in making sure that we integrate them into our asset management system. We have those maintenance and operating manuals, and we get the right people on board to maintain those.
Commissioner Burns?
Yes. How was CABA picked to be the community-based organization for this project?
Great question. So in the past, whenever Public Works has a call for interest, or we have partnership, or we need committee needs as part of our stormwater group, we work with livable neighborhoods in order to submit out that call for interest. Responses to that call for interest. So an email goes out, it lists out all of the identified needs, the criteria of whether it be a committee member, like we just had some 5,600 meetings where we did the call for interest and we got them on the list. They were able to participate. So we reach out, send out an email, they respond with an interest, we meet with them. We say, are you capable of this? This is ultimately what we're asking, the needs are, the parameters of this particular scope were provided in detail with CSO 55. And then an MOU is developed, which then we are able to get in on this agenda item. CSO 55 does not have a lot of, we had CABA as a request interest. On other call for interests, we've had more than one reach back out to us.
So no other organization was approached?
No, from my understanding, the Livable Neighborhood submits those call for interest to the neighborhood, the neighborhood groups that are within that geographic area, and CABA was the one that responded.
Okay. And did I read correctly that if the grant is $200 million that we could receive, is that right?
No, it's a $20 million
20 million.
grant. Mhm.
But how much would the statutory partner, CABA, receive of that money?
Right. So it would be approximately $1 million is what we're identifying. 500,000 of that is project-related support. That support would be needed from, typically we, in our general process is we identify a consultant to assist us in leading that support. And through this grant, it encourages a community-led facilitation for that, as Edgar mentioned, to have the community directly involved and led. We struggle getting the participation at times with engineers leading the charge. So this is a way for the EPA to assist us in encouraging and supporting a community-led facilitation of those,
Right.
of those activities.
So I guess I need to ask the CABA people, what would you do with that award money?
Absolutely, and thank you for the good question, because I think it's important to understand the position and the reason CABA answered the call. We have staff that speaks several languages, and we have the reach to the different hubs in the community. And so what we're thinking is that besides hiring a community dedicated person that would be working and communicating and educating on the design part and the results of what trails and the water as new water system would look like, we would also be making sure that all of the neighborhood groups and all of the local organizations that are in the area are educating themselves and able to help maintain the infrastructure. That is part of these. If it is a lake, or I'm sorry, if it is a pond, of if it is a new green space, we all need to learn how to keep it clean and maintain and be part of the solution. Self-investment is very important. So this funding would go directly to all of these neighborhood groups to support their initiatives and educate in how to utilize this new structure. I don't know if that answers your question.
Not really.
Excuse me, sorry, I'd also like to add that we believe that we would be a really good statutory partner for this grant, because not only are we working right now currently with Mid-America Regional Council Center on the reforestation of Central Avenue, adding in new trees, but we've also received funding from the UG, from the Hollywood Casino Grant for the past 2 to 3 years to maintain the reforestation of Central Avenue, therefore giving us a very good background in all of this and pretty much leading us to the best option.
I would like to see some sort of plan, what you guys have, and describe, here's where we think the money's gonna go. And then I think we also need to follow it for a while to see where the money went, to make sure it went where we're supposed to go. You know, because that's a lot of money. And there's a lot of other of folks in the community would like to get a piece of that big pie. But one, I like the project, but I want to see, like what we have tonight, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and this is when we're going to do it. And I don't think that's too big of an ask. Thank you.
Commissioner Stites.
Stites, District 7. So, Mr. Galicia, one of the, you had, when you were giving your explanation about what the $1 million would be used for, you said that it would be divided up or given out to, and the young lady, she's saying, shaking her head, yes, to all of the community groups that are within the affected area. So do you have, is there any sort of is that a commitment that you are giving a certain dollar amount to each of those groups? And if so, who divvies that money up to go to those groups and who decides how much? And so,
Absolutely. So first of all, the unified government has full control of all the funds. Secondly, we will build a budget with specific allocation of funds for the different requirements on the grant. So there is no here is $1 million, do what you will at all, ever. It's very, very clear on the grant structure that the allocation for funding is because of the outreach that needs to be done and included to the community itself. So we would not be working alone, and we would not be working without the unified government's participation and decision-making.
so would the unified government have a role in deciding we agree or don't agree with the direction of this $1 million? I mean, are we able to say, yeah, okay, you want to go, and I use this, not being serious, but we want to go buy chocolate milk and donuts, right? But, and we say, well, you know what, we're not up for that. We think it would be better utilized in this area. So is that, I mean, who's the overseer of these dollars to make sure that we're in agreement with, you know, because just like Commissioner Kane said, $1 million is a lot of money, and a lot of folks would like to, put it to good use. And so
So Commissioner Stites, that's a
Yes.
great question. Sarah Schaefer, Unified Government Senior Engineer. So as mentioned, as part of my UG responsibilities is that UG is responsible for all sub-awards. Anything that is required, like take for instance, scope of work that comes about that is not absolutely project related, that wouldn't be in our standard issue of scope. Those come back through, are presented and approved by the commission. So while we know we have target needs and we know we have a targeted plan, those plans still have and are subject to the UG processes and protocols, the procurement processes and protocols of subawards and awarded work. So just like CABA will have a scope, they will have a fee associated with that scope. They will be required to invoice. They will be required for deliverables. They will be required to do and meet and maintain all of those all those items as well. Their ideas of subawarding additional work or additional educational components, reaching into their network of neighborhoods to assist us in educating and outreach and participation in that engagement process. Those are additional subawards to their plan, right? So that $1 million could be subawarded up into 10, 15 additional types of procurement activities, of which they are committed to following the UG process of competitiveness.
So that a sub-awards that you're referring, so if I'm not mistaken, and tell me if I'm wrong, 19.5 goes towards the project, 500,000 of that goes towards exactly what you're talking about, right? The education, the communication with it. So I'm not sure why there would be,
On that $500,000, then there's an additional 500 to make a total of 20 million, right? So 19.5 is project related. And then 500 of it is what we call supplemental. So they have the health benefits. So take for instance, the reforestation. We know that we're probably going to engineer a plan with the assistance of CABA and saying, here's the overland flow path. Here's where trees may be best suited. Please come up with a plan on getting those implemented or identified locations. Come to the commission with this plan. We'll present on them. We'll get the approval. So there's additional items that will be coming back in for those types of awards. So they're our lead statutory partner that helps us with those components, but activities of that lead statutory partner are still required and under the same requirements that we as staff have as well for any of our ideas on programming.
so just in a nutshell, tell me what the additional $500,000 does of the 19.5, because you lost me.
Yeah, so $500,000 may be part of that reforestation, that
maybe.
workforce, right. So as mentioned, we are still in development of those scoping ideas right
Who
now.
set and I don't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt, but
no, you're good.
so who set the 500,000? Why isn't it 250? Why isn't it 100,000? Why isn't
We're
it 700?
talking in, right, and we're talking in big numbers right now. So we, as requested, will come back in with a very detailed, and itemized scope. We are trying to get these in as quickly as possible to, Commissioner's point prior to. And so right now we're in parallel of getting CABA in front, going through the MOU process, and then identifying up the application. We're doing those all in alignment. So I'm here at the administrative level saying, here's our administrative package and our ideas. The definitive level, which would be the contract level, is the application. And we'll, moving this to October allows us to bring that full application package back to you.
Commissioner Burns.
This is for the CABIS staff. Are you convinced that you will be able to do this and fulfill all the obligations of the grant?
Absolutely, sir. We are ready to deliver.
And who on your staff would do that?
Okay. Part of that would be the hiring of a dedicated person with specific knowledge base and background so that the grant needs are covered. That's part of it. And again, I cannot speak of specifics because we're working on those numbers. We're working on the deliverables. But we will be able, and we're able to engage because of the history of our organization, the relationships that we maintain, and the vision that we're putting forward. We will be able to deliver on the mission of the grant at the same time as the mission of our organization.
Shelley, I would hope you or your office or your designee would be on top of this, that, you know, when you're dealing with federal funding, it's nothing to mess with. And there's accountability. And, you know, there's nothing short of that we should not perform.
Shelley
Go ahead.
Kidman, Chief Financial Officer, and we had a bit of a discussion about this earlier. And it would be our intention to bring this back to the commission periodically if we get the grant, because we're just at the application stage. But to bring back information to the commission periodically so that as the details are worked out, as specific projects are identified, as communication strategies are done, that you all are informed, you see what the amount of money is that's going towards those efforts, et cetera. So we do hope to have that ongoing accountability as well. And that this grant is somewhat unique in that it involves a community partner. But as I understand it, it's a requirement of the grant is to have a community partner. And in order to apply for the grant, which was why the staff had done this request for interest to community groups. It's certainly something that we could take a look at if you would want us to explore alternatives to that before we bring this back to the commission to see if there's other entities that might be able to participate if there was an interest in that. But a lot of this is a little bit of the cart and the horse because we have to get the grant, they have to do some work and identify some of these more community-focused initiatives, develop a plan in concert with the staff. The staff then brings it back to the commission provides support or says, no, we don't want to go that direction, so that it's an evolving process. It's not just one and done. So again, a bit unique in terms of a grant, but an important part of accountability.
Anything else? Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, Shelley, our CFO, I'm just thinking worst case scenario. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, but let's say everything went through, but for whatever reasons, CABA couldn't deliver. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just asking, what is the repercussions with Fed money being just not meeting what they were supposed to meet? What's the repercussions on that?
Right, if there was an issue, and this is true of pretty much all federal grants, if there's an issue with a partner, then you have to do an amendment with the granting agency to substitute in a new partner that can perform the work. So there'd be an approval process that would have to go through the EPA. It would go through the commission again. But there's processes so you don't jeopardize the overall grant because like Sarah said, this is $19.5 million that'll go into actual projects. And so, that wouldn't be jeopardized. And if you want to add to that.
No, from our understanding, it would be the UG who would have to meet those criteria. So to Shelley's point, she's familiar with maybe revisions and things like that, but typically it's on us to help CABA be successful as well. We don't just let them hang out there and run with it. We want them to be successful because it's our project that's successful. Public Works has tried tirelessly to enhance our public engagement, our education, and our outreach programs, which has fallen desperately short of expectation of the community. This grant is an additional way for us to try something that we haven't tried before in order to try to meet those expectations. What can those expectations look like? How can we get more involvement? There's been times where we've had meetings promoted and we have 3 people show up, and we were hoping for at least 30, So if CABA can help us fill a room with 100 people to put Post-it notes on places, to have engaging conversations, to have translators available, I am all for it. I mean, this is something that as a partnership, you're in it together. You're in it to succeed together. That is as much as I can speak of on the CSO 55. We will also assist them in being successful in bringing to the commission their ideas, their budgets, their scopes on other items that still meet the goals of the UG. You get through the health department's understanding of heat island, the health department's understanding of clean air and air quality in and around our central districts. However, we can align work that they're willing to assist the UG on using federal dollars, that it's aligned with our metrics and our reports, with all of the hard work that staff has done through the various departments. This could be an innovative way through this EPA grant to do those things.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah. Out of what funding will Black and Veatch be paid out? I'm sure they're not going to volunteer to do it.
Correct. Black and Veatch is our stormwater partner, and the grant would help us support their fees as well. They currently come out of stormwater rate, so this would assist us in our stormwater rate fees as well.
So it'd be paid out of the CSO 55 grant?
Yes. So instead of our enterprise funds, we're able to leverage that, which is part of our programming costs, our overall programming costs. So we're able to have these fees go toward, or these grants go towards that as well.
I trust they will keep the costs down for us.
We try.
Chairman, we have Commissioner Townsend online with her hand raised.
Commissioner Townsend. Commissioner Townsend, you're muted.
I am unmuted now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to my fellow commissioners and the presenters. I had just a couple of questions, if I'm not too premature. I don't think you had called for other questions, so I can wait if the voting members have further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing my hand.
Commissioner Townsend, now would be appropriate if you want to go ahead and ask your questions before I close out with questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schaefer, Mr. Miles, good evening. I wanted to verify the total amount of this grant is 20 million, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's the potential. That's what we'll be asking for, and we hope to be successful in that.
Okay, then I kind of lost the math of it when there was a mention of 19.5 and then 500,000, that clearly totals 20 million. But then there was discussion about 1 million to CABA. And I have to commend CABA for even applying and coming forward, because I heard that there were no others that came to the call of the request. And from what I'm understanding, there has to be a community partner. So can you just tell me again, what is the division of this 20 million? And I may as well ask it now. I know the goal, of course, is to comply with our consent decree to separate storm water from rainwater. Can any of this money be used to reduce the amounts that citizens have to pay for their storm water in a year? So this is kind of a question of the use and also a budget question. Thank you.
Great question, Commissioner Townsend. Sarah Schaefer, Senior Engineer, Unified Government, Public Works. I'll get used to saying that all at once at some point. The math. So we have to kind of think of this as a $20 million hole. The project need is 19.5. $500,000 of that would be spent on engagement, outreach, and education, regardless of whom is conducting it. Now, if you can think about CABA's, now their Venn diagram, 19.5 million, 500,000 of that now is in this like Venn diagram in the center. That's what CABA is assisting us with. It's direct project related, CSO 55, direct project related support, approximately $500,000 of that 19.5 million, which is $500,000 of their approximate 1 million. So $500,000 crosses both the boundaries of CABA's assistance and our project need. Does that kind of make sense right there? And then the other 500,000, which gives them their further $1 million total, those are UG needs, whether they be through the public health department or whether they be through an additional stormwater education component needs. So this is a sewer fund project, but it has a strong, it's going to be a stormwater maintained project. So we have both educational processes here of sewer rate and stormwater rate, sewer implementation to separate, and then stormwater maintenance to make sure that it keeps working in perpetuity of the system. It becomes a stormwater asset. So does that help clarify and visualize where that $1 million, we have $500,000 that crosses the boundary of their $1 million budget, but our $19.5 million need?
Yeah, I still think I'm not sure. So you're saying 500,000 would go to any organization that is set up to help. Is that correct?
The lead statutory partner, one of their main requirements are to assist us with the education, the outreach, the engagement of an infrastructure project. And so the lead statutory partner would have approximately that much budget to assist us with that per our project budget.
And that would go to any organization designated as their lead, as your lead. It just happens to be
Statutory
CABA.
partner, correct.
Okay. So the other $500,000 is for engagement or whatever. So does that give us then the 19 million to put into other stormwater, sewer separation projects or what? That's what I'm trying to get at. What is that going to?
I think I might have confused you here. Let me come up with a quick thing. Maybe I can hold it up and we can zoom in.
I'm really trying to concentrate on the 19 or 18.5 that we've got. What is that going to be used to do? And could any of it be used to give some relief to all taxpayers on their stormwater fees, whatever they are?
So I don't know if we can kind of see here. So we have approximately, we have the CSO 55 project need, which is 19 million and this 0.5 million. So CSO 55 in total is 19.5 million. So we have UG components needs, construction, inspection, design. Then we have our engagement needs, which is where we have our statutory lead partner. CABA is going to assist us with that. So this is our total project needs right here.
Okay.
Other UG priorities to include heat island reduction, air quality, additional community education, engagement as it relates to potentially our rates. Again, we're working out those particular scopes, which we'll bring back. That's where this other $500,000 comes into play. But all of these strategies reach back into some component of a UG priority. Did that help you out more? When it comes to offsetting rates, what we try to do here, this is offsetting, this particular project is funded by the sewer rate. So this would be assisting in minimizing future rate increases, trying to keep them at that minimum level, the minimal level that we can to afford the needs that we have. There is no maintenance dollars included in this grant. Maintenance dollars are what would be coming from our stormwater rate.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stites.
This will be the last time I ask it, because who set the 500? And I appreciate the overlap there. Who set that number? 500 and 500. Is that federally mandated?
No.
We just come up with that number?
That's typically how we try to budget internally. So internally, if you have a $19 million construction project or a $20 million construction project, we're kind of getting that down. When we have design efforts, so we're going to spend $19 million, we think $500,000 of that should be going to, at a minimum, going to the effort of engagement. Those are the community meetings. Those are sending out information, invites, preparing the strategic communication blasts. That's the effort that facilitates, like the facilitator. So when we get consultants on board, that's about what we try to budget for when we go through a full design and engagement process is approximately $500,000. So if I were budgeting this just out of our regular standard project management, that's how I would say, hey, here's this line item. We have this amount of work preparing to be done. I'm gonna budget $500,000 for this engagement, and then we go and we solicit.
Earlier in a answer that you gave, you said that we're talking in big numbers.
Yeah.
So are these numbers fluid then?
It could be. That's why we go through the budget process. Once we get an understanding of scope, once we go through like the RFP, as he mentioned, they're going to look to hire on a full-time professional. That'll go through a process, whatever we get for understanding that. But we don't have down to the nitty gritty. Even when it comes to construction, we work in pretty big round numbers until they go through the design, the RFP process, the hiring process, and things like that.
It just seems to me like it's an awful lot of money for education of people, right? I mean, we're getting rid of, and I don't want to dumb it down, right? We're separating our sewer from our stormwater. Everybody educated? I did it free.
I appreciate that. Can you come to
I don't-
every one
I-
of my meetings? I would love it.
I guess, if I need,
I
if
say that tongue in
somebody else
cheek.
can't say that, I guess I can.
I say that tongue in cheek, but we do, and I apologize, we did not have our communications expert here, but I am going to ask, Jeff Miles to kind of talk about the value of the dollar, the ask that we have in the engagement process. $500,000 is kind of our middle road of what it takes to go through that.
But it's not 500,000. It's 500 plus the tapping into another 500,000 for education, because you're talking about hiring a person to educate. So
But
I mean,
it's
it's not just-
hiring a person to facilitate. So it's hiring a professional, like a planning professional is what we've discussed before. It's hiring that planning professional
Do what?
to create the content, to go through and have the process of communications and engagement. It's a plan that we have to go through for all of our projects.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burns?
To the Cabot organization. And I'd like to put this rumor to rest one way or another. Will any of the funding, if awarded to you, be used to promote the food trucks any more than they already are?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And may I add a couple of things?
Sure.
Out of this allocation of funds, we will have to go through a process, voting, structuring, design, and present it to the project, to the board, to the unified government before we invoice anything. And we might end up communicating with $20 worth of service, and we'll be fine with that, as long as the community engages and delivers on the project. So this is just an allocation of funds within the scope of the grant. We don't even have the money. If we don't apply for it, we don't have a problem. If we apply for it and get the money, then all these lacks that are important to where the money just does not go out there get implemented, and we all have to go through the process. So there is no free range of funding, and as we build the real budget and as we create the real set of activities and engagement, there will be quotes and implementation cost. But nothing will be going out without a proper procedure, documentation, and delivery.
You answered my question and you said no. Thank you.
Any other, any other questions from the commission? I do have a few. I noticed in reading the contract, it said that we could have one or more entities that we could partner with. So it's not forbidding us to reach out and bring another entity to the table, correct?
Correct. We just need one lead.
You just,
One lead,
one lead?
one lead statutory partner.
Okay,
That's the one who is identified to help us with the engagement, outreach, and education component of the infrastructure project.
sure. And just for that clarification, this would have taken effect immediately with some of the questions that have been raised here this evening. Had we advanced this evening, there was still a lot of questions, and just listening to what some of the commissioners have been bringing forward. If we could go back to the map that you showed of Jersey Creek, would it had the Advent location and the, I'll call it the trailhead picture? The CSO 55, I think I don't know, my page isn't numbered to tell you what it is, but it's the one that has the CSO Phase 1, reduced pollution in waterways. That one. When I think some of the concern that was raised also is we see the Central Avenue reforestation. We see and that's Cabo Lead. We see the Cabo Lead mobile business decarbonization, which I believe maybe that was the question that was raised earlier by a commissioner. And then we see an enhanced local mobility, UG CABA jointly led. I don't see anything else on there for any other community except CABA-led organization. So when it was first presented to me, it was a Jersey Creek item. And that Jersey Creek didn't put in for the application, but yet I do remember the commission having to deal with deforestation of Jersey Creek. And I think there was some concern that they didn't want to go back to a roadway or concrete. if I remember correctly, and maybe I've got it just backwards. I just remember we as a commission had that discussion, and now I'm seeing a wide enough paved roadway or trailway that leads from the trailhead all the way through Waterway Park, all the way through to Jersey Creek, all the way to Vibrant Health, a proposed development that's going to be happening at 13th and Parallel. And so help me understand how Jersey Creek's issues are being addressed and or the area around Big 11 Lake are being addressed in addition to everything that CABA is leading on this proposal. I mean, those were the questions that were proposed to me, so I'm proposing them to you.
So CSO 19 Phase 2 is what I believe you're referencing. So if you see the boundaries, and if I could draw another boundary of CSO 19, that would be to the east. You can see where kind of Waterway Corridor and Big 11 Lake is outside of CSO 55 boundaries. So they're not within this particular application, but they would be within the CSO 19 Phase 2 application, which is in current development with a lead statutory partner and a few other partnerships. And that's anticipated to be presented as an agenda item for the October agenda as well.
I think it may have been beneficial for us to quite possibly had both grants presented to us because the next grant, I don't know if it's time sensitive, but if it needs to be blue sheeted, I anticipate we're going to have the same opportunity to once again have a non-action meeting and then have a chance to have discussion. So moving forward, I think when we get a blue sheet that's time sensitive to be advanced in an immediate time frame with very few questions, an opportunity for the commissioners to ask those questions, I think it's a benefit for us to have that dialogue prior to bringing it forward for action. One other question, if I may, is there a cap on any of these designs per project or that may have to come forward? Who makes the decisions? If I know the comment was made that we've spent money in the past to do education process, and I think one of the commissioners made a statement that he had communicated the difference between the two. Spent money in the past and it fell short, and we're going to try again, and we're going to spend another chunk of money to once again try to communicate. This was done when we put the initial fees before the commission to the public. And we did a tremendous amount of community outreach. I know a number of commissioners held community meetings to try to educate their constituents. And now we're going to do another $500,000 to $1 million worth of education as to what this grant can accomplish. I think I feel we've already been down that road somewhat, and I think that raises the concerns about the amount of money going to that part of the project. I have another question. I was trying to take notes and listen to the committee so that we would be able to do that. I know on the very last, we skipped over a few things. Focus on community-centered pollution mitigation efforts. And you made something about heat islands. Well, I also represent Armourdale. And Armourdale has a tremendous heat island and a tremendous amount of pollution. And I think it was even stated by Public Works that it would probably behoove us to run the street sweeper down there more often to take the refuge out of the streets, that being the leaves and the branches. And I have yet to see a street sweeper down there. But if there's an opportunity to educate and be participating in eliminating that impact on our water, that would be one that we've already had a commitment to do. And I'm not saying that they haven't done it. I'm just stating I have yet to see it. And we're getting into the fall time of the season, and the leaves are going to be hitting the street. But if there's any heat islands and any pollution concerns, they're all around our community. But Armourdale specifically is an industrial base with residential population. And I don't see that in here. Is it in the next grant coming forward?
So Armordale is our next consent decree boundary. So we are preparing that next capital outlay of projects and programs and grant alignments. So currently our most time sensitive, our first area to address is what is known as the Jersey Creek watershed, not the Armordale watershed. Armordale watershed would be our next one. So that's why you see a lot of Jersey Creek projects in this first round of capital investment, because that's how the program is set up, is to address those first. And then second will be, I'm very excited to move into Armordale. We're preparing that capital outlay now, right? So, but that's why we work on a very large 25-year or more capital investment timeline with our enterprise funds.
I know that the Waterway Park is part of this process in this proposal, and it includes the 13th Street. I believe hope that's the right street address that runs around the Big 11 Lake by the blind school. That area there is there a part of this project that will be integrated with that area of our community that needs to continually be maintained and addressed?
Are you speaking on the local area plan, Waterway Corridor Local Area Plan?
Well, now we're getting into two different things. I might need to be paid a little bit to understand that education process. I'm just stating that on this plan, it showed on that picture, it shows it going right down through that area.
So Waterway Park and Big 11 Lake is to the east of this boundary. It is not within this sewer shed of CSO 55.
So it's not part of that reduced pollution of waterways right there with the UG lead area, not on this grant proposal, right?
This grant boundary is that big black line for CSO 55.
And so that little blue island sitting there off to the east is Big 11 Lake.
Correct, and it is not within the boundary.
So we're 2 blocks out of that boundary, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it the same way with Jersey Creek?
Jersey Creek, ultimately, we are trying to ensure that we're not affecting the headwaters, so the water that gets to the Jersey Creek itself.
And I'm going to need some assistance on trying to remember the request from those in the Northeast that brought forth the concern about Jersey Creek to ensure that we are listening to what their requests are and not what a third party might come in and mandate that we do, because there's already been money spent on part of that project in the past. And my understanding is the community liked that and they don't want to go back and spend more money tearing it out. And I think that's one of the questions that was posed to me as chairman, to ensure that that's not the case.
So the Jersey Creek, I believe you're referencing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers study on the ecosystem restoration or the naturalization of Jersey Creek. We were given a directive by the mayor to not pursue or do any type of activities in and around that area without coming back to the commission for approval with a very explicit terms. So that is not included in this grant application.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. I think it needed to be a matter of record that was the case. So we have a mobile business decarbonization, and we have the Central Avenue reforestation included in this. So that sounds like there's already 2 projects that have been identified through the partnership with CABA that needs to be done before any community input. Is that how we should interpret this?
So what I have learned tonight, Commissioner Burrows, is that our slides need to be more blank. So a month ago, when we first were brainstorming with CABA, these are the ideas that came out of that brainstorm. Since then, there has been multiple meetings since then, and I believe I'm going to let Edgar speak to this, but some of these boxed items are no longer relevant.
Well, first of all, Edgar Galicia, Central Avenue Betterment Association. As we were engaged, we started different conversations, And so the reforestation project that we are operating now only goes from 6th Street to 18th Street. And we recognize that on Central and in different areas of our area of influence, there are other places that could use more trees. And so thanks to this opportunity and possibility, we are thinking about moving the reforestation part of it forward. Now, at that moment, we were also talking about different options for usage of the spaces, the open spaces that were going to be created. We talked to several members of our community, and the idea of giving opportunity for the commercial corridor to expand was pushed back. And we listened to the community, and it was just an idea that took place and time at that moment. But again, it's just part of the brainstorming that we have been doing. The corridor, the commercial corridor is not there is no plan to be expanding it, and the reforestation plan is as part of the grant itself.
Thank you, thank you, Edgar Iglesias. I appreciate that very much. The last question I have is, I know in any project that moves forward, we have members of our commission that talk about minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and I would hope that percentages are at least the minimum standards are incorporated in those businesses in our community that will be targeted to do the work.
I'm going to go ahead and let Todd with CIS discuss that a little bit further with their priorities and their goals as they are the innovative partner of this project.
Yes, sir. Todd Peterson, Market Director, CIS. Thank you again. Yeah, that's right. This is exactly kind of our sweet spot in the context of these stormwater projects. We focus on elevating and prioritizing those local, small, minority-owned businesses. We're, I think off the top of my head, we typically target around the 20% range to make sure the project hours go to local, small, minority-owned business of the total project hours on the project.
And I think that's important. I know all night long, I've heard how we want to continue to grow our own and continue that communication so that we can maintain, move forward. But yet at the same time, this is a very complicated process. If you're talking of environmentalists, which I'm hearing, air quality individuals, I'm hearing, water testing, I'm hearing, engineering, I'm hearing. How do we propose to do that with $500,000? So there has to be a cost in maintenance somewhere. And I'm looking at the question that was raised about the monies that are going to be coming forward for billing. Is that going to be put back onto the public to do that? Or are we spending more money once again to educate and over-engineer these projects? Because these projects have been out here already. They were funded through the agreement with the unified government and the public in reference to the consent decree. And here we are again spending another $1 million for design and communication, and then we're going to go into consulting and design. So how much of the money is really going to hit the project itself? I think that's some of the questions, and I don't need an answer. I just want to share with you the questions I'm getting from my fellow commissioners in reference to some of this work. But that's why we wanted to have information only this evening, to ensure that we have a chance to have those questions answered as we move forward for next month.
Commissioner Burrows, I appreciate that, and we'll be prepared. I do know that we have community members who are very passionate and do request more engagement and more opportunities to provide input to our engineering infrastructure. We are at a place and time that's the perfect way to demonstrate the start to finish. You know, we've had a lot of infrastructure projects go out for construction, which means they've already been through 2/3 of the process. So this one is starting at the very first phase of the process. And we would like to be able to demonstrate and engage as many individuals as possible from the community to provide input.
Thank you, Sarah. We do have another question from Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, can you define on this map Mobile business decarbonation lead. Can you define what that little box means that's down here by, looks like, is that Kensington Park?
So I will say that the main interest that took us to accept these or be part of these was the fact that for many years, 8 to be exact, we have promoted the use of trails and healthy activities or active behavior in our community. Or we have the Free Wheels for Kids program that utilizes all the trails in the area that are available. And when the proposal of a trail came about, we're like, yes, we're all about that. We want more people to be running, walking, exercising and they need spaces. That's the first premise. The second premise is that this trail would have a trailhead in one end and the other. And at that moment, we spoke of having parking space and what could be the use for parking and people, some amenities for people to have handy while they use these spaces. And at that moment, we spoke of maybe opportunities for mobile vending or small spaces for small businesses to be created. That we are talking to the Rock Island Bridge about, or that we're talking for the 18th Street trailhead. The uses, that's all we're doing, talking about possible uses. Now, at that moment, that was a consideration. When we start talking about the space that was there for real to be applied, we realized that the trailhead is not as big as we were thinking. And so that was taken down, not from the slice, it was taken down from the vision. And again, anything that takes place will go through the many filters for security, for making sure everything is on the clear, and making sure the community is engaged in the outcomes of all of these building, all of these projects. We would be just the main organization, community organization engaged in this, but the grant allows for many other organizations to come in play and be active and be part of all of these. I hope this answers your question, Commissioner.
Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, I do ask council, I don't need to run through this. It was just information only. This wasn't a public hearing. We'll take formal action next month. That will be the time for the public to have their say. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right. The only thing we would need to do is set it over formally.
Could you say that again? I didn't
The
hear.
only thing we need to do is set it over formally.
Okay, committee being there's no further action mandated on this item, I would entertain a motion to hold this over for the next meeting, which is October 28th.
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. October 28th.
October 28th for the Public Works meeting, and we'll have it back before us at that time. And November 20th, November, that'd be, that's when we would advance to the full commission. It'd be in November. That we'll have to have a motion to fast track it then, and we won't know it won't necessarily need to be fast tracked. We'll have done our research, but we will make that decision. Committee, I just want to say thank you for your patience this evening in getting this moving forward. So I would make the motion that this item be held over until the Public Works meeting of November 28th.
So move.
October.
October 28th.
October.
It would be October 28th, Commissioner.
October 20th?
28th. You said November, so I'm just.
Oh, I'm sorry, October 28th. Thank you. trying to carry on two conversations. Appreciate that. I would entertain the motion. Somebody needs to make the motion per se, not just say so moved, please. Motion to hold the meeting over until October 28th, Public Works. 5 o'clock. No motion? Yes, with 30 days. We're just holding it over. Do we even need a motion to do that? I thought so.
Well, it's cleanest that way, and we're gonna have public comment on that date, and that is the date we're setting this for action. So
Okay, we have who made the motion? Okay, we have a motion to hold it over until October 28th, 5 o'clock, Public Works Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Just needed for a matter of record to ensure we're doing things properly here. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Do we need to repeat the motion?
For
Okay.
clarity, can I get the first and the second? Who made the original motion? Kane with the motion, Burns with the second?
Well, I think Commissioner Burns made the first.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, committee. We've got this all straightened out now, right? Have we confused anybody anymore? Okay, Madam Clerk, when you have a second, please call roll.
Roll call. Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Stites. Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, public, for being patient with us this evening. I would entertain a motion for adjournment. And once we adjourn, stick around for the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee.
Stites Commissioners District 7 will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Stites. Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. We are adjourned.
Madam Clerk, are we good to go? All right, thank you very much. Good evening. I think if we can dispense with extraneous conversation, we might be able to get home in time to watch the ball game. I'd like to welcome you to Administration and Human Services Standing Committee for September 23rd. And before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on-site, and all participants joining by phone should please mute your phones when you're not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so the public that's watching knows who is speaking. And also please be sure to speak directly into a microphone so that your comments are heard and properly recorded. This is critical given the number of remote participants, and it's also guidance from our Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments are included in the record of the meeting. The public can also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting our clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday prior to the meeting. And of course, the public also has the opportunity to provide comments either by phone or Zoom or in person here in the 5th floor conference room. Public comment is allowed during each agenda item and should be limited to that item at hand per the Commission rules of procedure, and should not include rude or derogatory remarks, reflections as to integrity, abusive comments or statements as to motives and personalities. And with that said, I will now call our meeting of Administration and Human Services Standing Committee meeting for Monday, September 23rd, 2024 to order, and ask our clerk to call the roll.
Roll call. Hill, we have an absent member. Davis,
Present.
Ramirez,
Here.
Kane, Bynum,
Here.
and Townsend.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any revisions to the agenda tonight?
There are no revisions.
Do have minutes for approval from July of 2023.
Davis, second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum. Motion carries.
Our first item is a resolution for Wyandotte County Sexual Health Information for Teens. It's a WICO Shift grant, and we have Mr. Wesley McCain from the Health Department. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Wesley McCain, Community Health Manager at the Health Department. We brought this item to you all last year because this is the second year that we applied for this grant. We have a longstanding relationship with the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools to provide sexual health education to their kids. For many years, we've gone in and taught puberty classes. We've done youth health days. We worked some with high school students over the last several years. In the last 3 years, we were able, because of some education staff we brought on with ARPA funds, we were able to, and a partnership that we have, that we built with Young Women on the Move, we were able to increase our work and serve a lot more kids and do a lot more kind of intensive work, which was really appreciated by them. But that grant ended, and then the ARPA funds were also ending. And so we wanted to continue that partnership. And so that was the reason that we submitted this grant last year. We didn't get it. And so we're submitting it again, and we should hear pretty soon about it. But it's essentially would allow us to do sexual health education with all the 7th graders in KCK Public Schools. And then there's a mental health and like emotional self-regulation curriculum that goes along with that. And it's evidence-based, has been shown to work really well. Helps kids kind of learn as they're transitioning into that era of their life, right? Stuff I would have appreciated having when I was in middle school that I don't remember getting. I also really like the curriculum because it includes, along with that, just there's some kind of life skills that are built into it well that I think that were really helpful for the kids as well. So it's if we were to get it, it'd be 3-year grant. There's no match. And it's about, 400 and well, there's you all have the amounts there. It's 443,426 per year for 3 years. I would fund 2 staff at the health department, a sub-award to Young Women on the Move, and some costs for the curriculum, and then also an evaluator to help evaluate it. And I'll stand for any questions about it.
Are there questions from the committee? Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thank you to the health department as always. You know, I know our department is heavily grant funded, but they do a lot of good work with the grants and you guys do a good job of trying to look out and try to get those grants out there. And so thank you for all the work you do, and especially in this realm. Working with middle schoolers, being a middle school teacher, I understand. I understand it very much so. So I thank you for all that you do.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that.
Other questions from the committee? Is there anyone who's online that wishes to address?
There are no hands raised.
Written communication received about,
No comments were received.
is there anyone present in person? Okay. In that case, I will take a motion to approve. Beg your pardon. Yes, sir.
Are items 1 and 2 the same? And do they need to be separate votes?
Commissioner, this is Z Bishop with the UG Legal Department. They are not quite the same. They do look a lot alike. They're a little confusing as we were writing them. They're not quite the same. I believe that Mr. McCain is going to speak on the second item next. They do require 2 separate votes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend. Davis.
Aye.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Kane. Bynum. Motion carries.
And the second item, Mr. McCain, is, I think, an additional sexual health education partnership and grant.
Yes, it is. And it's very confusing. Because we didn't get the grant last year, the way we did it this year is we wrote, so we submitted a grant, and then Young Women on the Move also submitted a grant in hopes that one of them would be funded. And we obviously the grant that you all just approved would be the grant that we submitted that we would administer, and it would fund 2 full-time staff and more. The grant they submitted, we kind of flipped roles. And so then instead of us administering the grant, we would have one staff that would help out with some of the teaching in there. And because we've really appreciated the partnership. And it would also have allowed us to keep one of the health educator staff, which we hired on doing ARPA, and we want to continue our health education program because it's been really successful. So we wrote the grants so that so we wrote 5 schools into ours and 2 into theirs because there's 7 middle schools. And so if they get that one, then we'll essentially, they'll have to work with the district to kind of figure that out. And then if we get ours and they don't, it won't be that difficult for us to expand from 5 to 7 for the schools. It's a little bit of grantsmanship on there to see if we can get a grant to help our students.
Questions? Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. So this one's, I want to say it's a supplement, or is it like a part 2?
It's
or a backup.
probably, what were those options? Supplement, backup. It's kind of a backup is probably the best from our perspective. It's a backup. It would allow us to still participate in it, continue to do health education in the schools, not to the same degree. But yeah, that's probably the best thing is we're like a pretty small portion of another person's grant. And so, yeah, and it's one of those things where we would have to adjust if we were to get, in the unlikely event that we get both, then we would adjust, and we'll adjust in any of the scenarios. But we had the capacity, the person who helped us write the grant had the capacity to turn in both. It was allowed to do both, and so we submitted both, knowing that we would have to, if we were to get one or the other, that we would have to do some adjustment. And we kind of worked with the school district some on what that would look like. So
Okay.
we'll see what happens.
All right, thank you, appreciate that.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McCain, thank you so much. Question, does this require any matching at all?
No, it doesn't.
Great, so no matching is required. And have we received a similar grant to this in the past?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
I thought I had seen something. Okay, gotcha. And so I do see that this is working with USD 500, and you all have some of the stats there. Is this exclusively in partnership with USD 500?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And we do some work with the other school districts as well.
Mhm.
This one is just with that school district. We have it's just a much more robust, I guess, partnership and long-lasting partnership. But it takes, well, I would love to do this type of work with the other districts. It requires a willingness on the part of the districts, it requires an additional teaching partner, and then requires that relationship to get established, like with the teachers and the people who do the curriculum. And so we weren't ready for that with this grant, but we're kind of like in the process of getting used to some smaller co-teaching things that I think would like allow us to do this type of thing with like one of the other districts in the future.
Gotcha. So this will kind of be the training wheels for us to go on and do more work. If it goes well, I know it can be a heavy lift with federal funding.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. I think this is very, very much needed for our community. I don't think we discuss you all's work, right? This particular work as much as we could. And so thank you. And I hope we have more grants that we will be approving. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any comments received from the public?
No comments were received.
And is there anyone online that wishes to speak?
There are no hands raised.
And anyone here in person? Okay. I would take a motion to approve, please.
Davis, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Wesley. The next item is a resolution to amend our 2-year meeting calendar. And we talked about this prior in August, and it got referred to this standing committee. And I'll ask Z Bishop from legal to give us just a short remark or two.
Sure, Commissioner, this is Z Bishop with the legal department. At a prior full commission meeting, there was an initiative that was forwarded to change certain dates in the already adopted calendar. That got referred back to this committee, and I believe the only date that is still being considered for change is there is a full commission and planning and zoning meeting on October 31st. I believe the recommendation and the resolution would be to change that to October 30th instead.
And I also saw a change in early November. Maybe I misread what I was looking at, but I thought I saw from the 4th to the 5th.
So what's in here, Commissioner, as far as I understand, the original plan that was forwarded to the full commission is in here. That is labeled as option A in your packet. However, The schedule that actually is coming forward today, and perhaps Alan or the clerk can correct me if I am incorrect. I believe that the schedule that is coming forward today is only looking at changing the October 31st meeting and moving it to October 30th.
That's fine with me. Comments from the committee members? Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. So I'm good with moving that. There's another date that I would like to, at least put on the floor for the committee to consider. So I'll turn your attention to the standing committees, particularly for ED&F and NCD. The last meeting of the year is December 30th. And then we have our first full commission meeting on January 2nd. I don't know about you all, but those are pretty smack dab in the middle of kind of holiday season. And so what I would recommend for a additional change would be moving the ED&F and NCD December 30th date to January 6th and moving the full commission date on January 2nd to January 9th. All that would not mess up the flow. Those are actual dates for that month. So for the month of January, those committees were not meeting, and there's not a prior or another commission meeting that will not happen until late January. So it would still fall into our regular rhythm for how we meet. It would just be moving it that additional week. I don't know about you all, but if you ask me to do anything important post New Year's, yeah, not a good idea. And so just time with family and all that, that would be a recommendation I would make. And I know there was and I'll leave it to other, my colleagues, this was not my idea, but we also may have the opportunity to alternate the days on which standing committees go first. And that would throw in some equity as far as who is waiting for what. I'll throw in my 2 cents since I have the mic right now, but I would be perfectly fine with ED&F and Public Works going first on odd months, and then on even months, have NCD and AHS go first on the even months. And so those would be the changes that I would put on the floor.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Townsend with her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start from the last. I would appreciate if we're going to make some date changes that really throw off the sequence in which that's done. I'd like to see that in writing so I can look at a calendar. I'm not sure that we really need to change the sequence. It makes for better planning, but I would like to really hold off those ones that Commissioner Davis just mentioned until I can see them in writing and look at it at an actual calendar. If we've got on paper tonight, just so I'm clear, the October request, is that the only one?
Correct.
Other than, I'm sorry?
On paper, that's correct.
Yeah. Now, I did mark, and I can see, I'm not sure what the January dates are. I'm a bit confused. So it's not that I'm opposed, but I would be opposed to taking action tonight. Let's see them on paper so we don't have buyer's remorse later. And we know, what is going on here.
Okay, I appreciate that. Commissioner Kane?
One other question.
Oh, sorry.
One other question. The October is a request is it moving from the 31st to the 30th?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the reason for that request?
Because my grandkids would kill me.
It's Halloween.
Hey, Commissioner, they probably have to get in line, but I can see that. They probably have to get in line. Thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Kane.
One, I would like to support moving the 31st to the 30th. And then if Commissioner Davis, maybe if we show a calendar to the rest of the commission and then bring this back next month for the ones that you want changed. And then that way everybody's got an idea of what's going on.
I think that's a great idea. And I would say just to his second point, as far as the order in which the standing committees meet, I think that to bring equity, it's fair to bring about some kind of plan. He suggested even odd. In my mind, it could be 1/4 of the year, Public Works and Safety goes first, the next quarter, AHS goes first. But like tonight, Commissioner, we sat for 2 hours waiting for our meeting to start, and we do that every single time we meet. And we're just trying to ask for some parity. So,
I think that's all stuff that we should
and we
share with
can
the rest of the commission.
bring it forward.
You know, and say, here's for consideration, and tonight's a perfect example.
Correct. And we could start, you know, if we could get agreement with our fellow commissioners, we could start that in 2026. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was going to be, based off the rules of procedure, making a request to the chair that next meeting that this be brought and put on the agenda for discussion about
Absolutely.
switching or making the equity between committees, just whoever starts this time, or just so that we can have that discussion.
I appreciate that. Yes.
And Commissioner Z. Bishop with the legal department, I do just want to mention that under the UG ordinances, we would need to actually bring that change in the order of the meetings forward by ordinance. So we would just need some time to prepare that as well.
That's what we thought might be the case. Because prior, neighborhood and community development used to meet first. And we switched it, and I thought we had to make an ordinance change in order to do it. So, okay, thank you very much. In the meantime, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this. Our next meeting is the 28th, right?
Correct.
So it might be cutting it close to make that change 2 days if we're trying to accommodate the Halloween deal. So what might make sense is we vote this through as is and just bring it back, because the dates that we will discuss, right, in our next meeting aren't going to be immediate. So I'm fine with supporting this as is, just bringing the item back and then discussing the additional changes. But I don't want us to, with staff and everybody else, to have to hurry up 2 days beforehand and then change the schedule. That's just it's not wise. So I'm perfectly fine with supporting this and then having further conversation.
Bringing forward the rest of the potential
Yeah.
changes. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get clarity. So with what Commissioner Davis just said, again, I see the yellowed request for change, one we've already passed, so September is moot. Council also, I think, made mention of what I was about to question, which was the procedures as they currently read already state who goes what. And in terms of the equity, the inequity has always been equitable until we started having persons not on the same standing committee sequentially. So I think we need to take a review of that before we start bouncing around with possible changes to the ordinance when we, may not need to. So if
Agree.
we're
One
just
way or the
voting,
other.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if we're just voting tonight, just so I'm clear on the October, is that it?
Correct.
The proposed change? Okay. And that would
That's
give
the-
us some, a chance to discuss this more and see what's what, because it had been fine for so many years. I've been on now 10 and a half, 11. So I think that's where the problem arose, it
Well,
wasn't really inequitable because of the statute. So,
You're
okay.
exactly
Just want to
correct.
make sure I knew what we're voting on just tonight. Thank
No,
you.
you're 100% correct. And, one way or the other, it would be nice if we're going to continue to have standing committee member assignments that have us here 2 times a month instead of 1, then it would be nice to discuss among our fellow commissioners some way for some of us to start our committee first and have the opportunity to enjoy the rest of our evening rather than the other way around, which is what happens every single time now. So I would prefer the conversation one way or the other. And in the meantime, is there a motion for the change as presented in the agenda? Commissioner Davis.
I'm about to make a motion, but I will say I love that idea, Commissioner Townsend, because yes, I mean, initially the first 2 years, everybody was on the same 2 committees on the same day. And if you're waiting, but your day is your day. So I think it's one of the 2 things. Either we fix the schedule or we fix the appointment process. And I'm fine with engaging whoever from the mayor's office because I know the mayor makes those appointments, but I think that's a phenomenal idea. I will move to approve legal. Before I make this motion, there are 2 options, option A, option B. Does it matter between options?
I believe, Commissioner, there is only one option today. I know it's a little confusing because that option A was actually what was forwarded at the original full commission meeting. Today, there is only one option, and that is the second resolution and calendar, which is in your packet, which provides for just the change of that October 31st to October 30th date.
Okay, that would be the only change that would be made.
That is my understanding.
Okay, the clerk is, okay, they're all right. Then I will move to approve.
And Commissioner Kane.
I'm going to make that second with a comment. I would love to see our 2 at-large commissioners go to the mayor and ask them to put the committees back the way they were.
Can do that.
You know, we all got really good sitting on these committees for such a long time. And then you had to relearn and be up like what you guys said, wait 2 extra hours. And the next time somebody else gonna have to wait 2 extra hours. I think it worked a lot better the way it was before. So my request, Madam Chair, is that you and the at-large Commissioner Burrows take that task on.
Thank you. And you have seconded the motion.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We have a resolution approving an ARPA allocation for neighborhood grants. This is part of what we discussed when we had our special meeting. But if you were present for that meeting, you recall my request to the mayor was that we bring this 35,778 to this committee for hoped for adoption and approval, and then to move it to the full commission. And I'm sorry, but I need to back up and ask legal or the clerk, the item that we just passed, did that need a fast track?
No.
Okay. It'll show up on that first October agenda. Okay, thank you. Well, so let me clarify quickly, or I'll give it to Dr. Knieven and let her clarify. So the first one that we're going to have a look at is just the singular item of restoring the neighborhood grants in the amount of 35,778. And I'll give it to Dr. Knieven to explain that.
Short.
Mhm.
Okay, Shelley Knieven, Chief Financial Officer. So as you might recall, at the special session, we set aside $1,478,000, which went to the county general fund balance. The request that Commissioner Bynum had raised was that we restore the neighborhood grants, which we had cut in the budget process for the 25 budget. So this would be an amount that would restore what was previously budgeted. We would have to accelerate the process because it would need to be an application. We'd need to select the applications and have an agreement with each one of the neighborhoods that are selected before December 24th. They wouldn't have to actually do the work, but we just have to run through the process a little bit earlier than what we traditionally had done. But it's perfectly eligible and it would come from that 1,478,000 that was set aside. I'm glad to answer questions.
Thank you. I have a question because, and I actually don't need to discuss this right this very minute, but it was my prior understanding that the 2024 neighborhood grants that we allocated a year ago are in process as we speak, and that these dollars would be the 2025 neighborhood grants. And you all can correct me with the special ARPA language that we speak in as far as things being encumbered and whatnot. But it's my understanding that the money's in, we've done our due diligence on that part already. And now with it being potentially revenue replacement, if I'm saying that correct, we can allocate it into the 2025 year and they aren't on a time crunch. And if I'm wrong, you can just tell me.
Shelley Kneven, Chief Financial Officer. So all funds, including revenue replacement, needed to be encumbered or designated by December. What we would do, though, to accomplish that is, since there's already this process underway, is we would use our ARPA dollars for those applications. And then we would roll over the funding that's in 24 so that we would fund the 25. So there's a way to address it and meet all the rules.
Excellent. You are brilliant. Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
Maybe a second.
You have, okay. Thank you very much. And I really sincerely appreciate that. A couple of quick things. I know we had comments received from the public. We discussed the fact that we did not need to read all of those, but I would like to acknowledge the written communications that we did receive in support of this motion. And those included a member of Strawberry Hill Neighborhood Association, an individual, Sandy Zugelder, who did not indicate which neighborhood, Wendell and Marilyn Ishmael with Brooks Eyes neighborhood, 4 neighborhood leaders from the Welborn Watch areas, Welborn Watch Neighbors Helping Neighbors and the Field of Dreams neighborhood, Pamela Blood, who is with Kensington neighborhood, the South Turner Neighborhood Association, the St. Joseph Watchdogs, Emily Cisneros, also with Brooks Eyes, Barbara Kill with Turner Community, Karen Sheeby with the Turner area. We had Reverend Lee West with the Townhound Tenant Association and Aaron Strika with Rosedale Development. Those are the ones I know of that I personally got communication from. So if there are others, great, but my point there is, number one, to acknowledge and thank them for stepping forward in support, and also to make sure that the community understands that there's widespread support for this action, and I appreciate the clever way that you're going to handle it. And we do have a motion and a second. I guess before I do that, yes, I have Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is the motion on? Is this just on that particular item, which
It's
appears as
correct.
item number 5 on the number 9 on the resolution?
No, it's item number 4 on your agenda. It is its own singular, separate agenda item, and it is adoption of a resolution authorizing the disbursement of neighborhood grants from ARPA funding in the approximate amount of $35,778. It is its own separate agenda item.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Not expecting to be part of this meeting tonight. I did look at the entire homework book that came for this, and it shows neighborhood grant disbursements in the amount of 39,000. So this is the same item though, is that correct?
It is, with a slightly different amount, and when we get to the next agenda item, we can address that, but we're taking care of the neighborhood grant piece with this
Okay.
item.
Okay, and that amount is, you say less than
35.
39,000 that I'm
That's
looking at?
correct. That's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes,
Chairman, this motion will need to also include a fast track.
thank you. It does. Commissioner Kane, I believe you made the motion. Would you add a fast track? Who's the seconder?
I was the second. I second the fast track.
Thank you very much. Any other comments need to be made? Okay, appreciate it. Roll call.
Roll call, Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. The last item is a resolution approving various ARPA allocations. And Dr. Knieven, I may have mistakenly, I saw the same thing Commissioner Townsend did with the 39,000, and I may have been mistaken in assuming those were duplicates from the one we just approved. So I'll let you clarify one way or the other on that for us.
Thank you. Shelley Knieven, Chief Financial Officer. Those are duplicates. The amounts are just slightly different. We had used 39,000 in some of our preliminary discussions. And I believe the 35,778 is the amount that was in the budget this year. So that's where the differences came from. Item number 5 is a resolution that the mayor's office has brought forward, and Irene Castillo is here to answer some questions if needed. I can certainly talk through what these requests are. And I have a clarification on the very first one, just to share with the committee. So there's 8 requests that are on here. The first one from the Village Initiative, they had originally asked for 150,000. They have sent in an email. They received some additional grant funding. So they have revised the request to 110,000. And that's to do some transitional housing, repairs to existing housing, and some support services for the residents that then go into that housing. They are one of the subrecipients that the commission had selected back when we did the allocation a couple of years ago, and they have completed all of their work. 100% was very successful. The second one is the Old Quindaro Museum. In your packet, there's information about electrical, plumbing, and HVAC work that they've requested. If this moves forward, what we would do is enter into an agreement actually with any of these outside agencies to specify what they're going to use the funds for. And we would get the agreement in place by December of 24, but we would give them time, typically to July of next year is what we've done with some of the other subrecipients. We would give them time to actually do the work. Their estimates were slightly more than what was recommended, the 50,000. So we would have them kind of prioritize that, but it'd be in the nature of capital improvements. The all-access park benches, there was a lot of discussion at the special meeting for that, and that would be something the park department would administer. And I believe Angel's here if you have questions for her. The warming shelter activities related to the unhoused population for 100,000. That is an item that's in the current year budget, and in a similar way, we would do the advance the ARPA money first. We would contract with the nonprofit that we currently contract with. They're, I believe, will be in their second year of their contract. So we would just make sure, again, as long as it's contracted, then they would be able to use some of those funds depending on when the bad weather is and when we would have a shelter that would open up. They'd use the funds as needed. The industrial washer for fire station at 29th and State at $10,000. That's a rough estimate of the cost for that. And it's, as I understand it, an identified need by the fire department to wash their turnout gear, which gets exposed to chemicals and such when they're in fire situations. And so it's an important operational need that they identified. The HVAC and other equipment at the police firing range. One of the HVAC units has been replaced by building and logistics. The other, I understand has been repaired, but this would actually replace the second unit, but they do have air conditioning right now. And whatever the cost is, which I believe is going to be closer to $8,000, then we would identify other equipment upgrades at the police firing range that the police department would work to identify what those are. So it would stay within the eligibility, and we would procure those before the end of the year. Restoration of the John Brown statute in an amount up to 50,000. There's a lot of material in the agenda for that. And they have gotten some quotes on the cost of doing the renovation. So again, we would enter into an agreement with that nonprofit to make those repairs. And then we'd oversee the work since it's a statute owned by the unified government. And then finally, an additional allocation. This was something that also was cut in the budget process for 25, but it's 100,000 for the home repair program previously administered by Livable Neighborhoods. Now, in that case, we were administering that program. It actually had less funding than that with our own staff. And since we do need to have something encumbered, what we would recommend is we either have a partnership with our community development department to administer these funds and get these funds spent by year end, or to partner with one of our nonprofits in the area that already does minor home repairs, since they already have that expertise, and we would do a quick solicitation of proposals to have one of them administer it. So either way, we would be able to get those dollars encumbered or spent by the end of the year. So all of that added together is 495,000. And with the amount that we just had the commission just approved, 35,778, our remaining county general fund balance, if this is approved, would be $956,222. And we would recommend that that stay earmarked in the general fund balance, as that is funding that quite possibly we will need to meet some of the sheriff's office demands and expenses for the jail operation. So we're asking for consideration to leave the funding. That does comply with ARPA regulations, because technically these dollars were declared as revenue replacement way back in 21. And there's a lot of technicalities about how those dollars work, but they offset basically staff salaries. And then the commission made a decision to set aside those funds for the grant match. And so instead of grant match, then it would be moved over to the fund balance. And glad to answer questions, or if Irene wanted to make any comments, I
think we have Mr. Murray.
Or Lavert.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Murray, thanks for being here. And I will turn it to you, and I will just say, I'll just turn it to you first, and then I'll make a comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavert Murray, Chief Economic Development Advisor. And this list it started out as 9 projects, and you're right, there was duplication. You'll see the 39,000 that you approved earlier on this list as well, so it comes off. But in discussing this matter with the mayor just before he left town, he asked that at least representatives from some of the organizations that these funds are earmarked for be here and justify the request for the funds. I see that, some organizations are here, perhaps others are not, but the mayor wanted me to make it clear that these recommendations are not his, but he's merely trying to facilitate a process where he brings this before the commission so that you can decide what you want to fund from those ARPA dollars. And of course, he knows that there are other projects that you may want to give consideration to as well. But he received a request. He merely facilitated bringing those requests before you.
For example, and it's been noted that the village initiative request, and Mr. George is here, has gone down from $150,000 to $110,000. The Quindaro Museum amount, their needs are much greater than the 50,000 that is identified, but the mayor thought this is a way to keep that museum alive and active and moving forward. The park benches, and it's been noted that Angel can address any questions you might have about those park benches, and I know that there's been discussion in the last commission meeting about those park benches. So again, I know, for example, the John Brown statue, when you look at the documentation in your file or in your packet, it notes an amount of approximately $31,000 needed. What is not in that packet, and there's been discussion with the Freedom Frontier group, they had wanted dollars to build an encasement around the statue to protect it. That part is not in there. And I think the mayor just kind of rounded it to $50,000 if you chose to approve that project. But certainly it works at the lesser amount of 30. And then maybe consider an additional 20,000 later. And that pretty much covers it, but
Thank you.
if there are any specific questions about them, about these projects, I'll try to address them as best I can. Don't have a lot more information about them.
Okay, I thank you very much. So I want to turn it to Commissioner Townsend with her hand up, and then Commissioner Kane, did you have a comment? Okay, we'll go with Commissioner Townsend and then Commissioner Kane. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, all. Madam CFO, what is, roundest figures, the total amount on these items identified in the resolution? I know there was a few changes with the neighborhood grant, but currently what do we have? What is the total on all these requests?
Shelley Kneven, CFO. So not including the change to the village initiative, the resolution you're discussing right now is 495,000. And with the resolution you just passed, that included funds for the neighborhood grant program of $35,778. That's a total of $530,778. But right now,
Okay.
we're talking about 495, which the Village Initiative has said that they've got some additional grant funding, so that could come down by 40,000. So that would be 455,000 if amended and if approved.
Okay, so 455,000. The reason I asked that question is, so how much money in the last meeting, the special meeting, were we talking about in terms of allocation, with the rest of it to be used exclusively to support the county budget?
A variety of things were approved for allocations, but the amount that was set aside that is affected by these decisions was $1,487,000. And that was set aside to go to the county general fund balance. So these dollars, all the other dollars were already allocated to other projects. So if these dollars are approved, then they would come from that fund balance designation.
Okay, so the 455,000 approximately from the 1.4 something million. With the rest, I don't want to say earmarked, but identified loosely to support the county budget. Okay, I get it. And the reason I'm asking that is I'm a bit disappointed, more than disappointed, and would still want to pursue certain corrections that I talked about at length that need to be made to Boston Daniels Park that were not otherwise included already in some funds that had been procured or grant that's outstanding or either we have. The north wall, the east wall that is crumbling and literally on the sidewalk has been taken care of in a request for funding, but that still leaves the north wall structures that are crumbling and need to be replaced. And I also talked about the fact that for the last 5 to 6 years, I've sought funding to address the crumbling stone structures on the entrance to Parkwood around 10th and Kimball. These are parks that are used daily. It's nice that the John Brown statue, they want to do some restoration, but I can see where as that whole project, the Quindale Ruins project takes off, there would be other funding opportunities for that. Maybe we can do both. I don't know. So is it appropriate? Can we do this now, address these dollars for funding of the infrastructure for the Parkwood retaining walls, as well as the north side of Boston Daniels Park? Neither of those items are currently covered by any other grants. And it is, I sort of say ludicrous not to include those things that I've heard for the last several years we don't have money for when we have it now, ahead of, the statute. If we can do both, fine. But that's why I was asking how much money we have to work with. And I think I heard that our director of Parks and Rec, I don't know that we have an estimate on what those numbers would be.
Right.
But I would think at least 30,000 would make a big dent in those items.
And she is here, and I'm going to defer having her come forward for just a moment. And I'm going to hear from Commissioner Kane. Go ahead.
Who made up this list?
The mayor advanced this list to you, to the standing committee, after receiving requests from various organizations, individuals, and I'm told other commissioners.
Good. Finish your thought.
Well, I'm confused. I mean, we set the budget. We did everything we're supposed to do. And now there's some in here that definitely need it. I'd sure like to have a park. And this hasn't had in just a couple of years. This has been going on since I've been here. But I'm not sure this is fair to this committee to vote on something. Because if I'd have known we were going to be able to resubmit something, I would have had some of the folks that I know resubmit something. I mean, that's a lot of money, and then it's thrown on us to say yay or nay. And then Levert, didn't you say that the mayor wanted him here? And then Mr. George is the only one here. Is that what did you say something like that?
I did, yes.
Okay, so.
Oh, I'll just say thank you for that comment, and thank you, Commissioner Townsend, for your thoughts. My thoughts, I think, are similar. Number one, I struggle with the new list because we had a special meeting with a list. And we thought that we had allocated things where the consensus of the commission was at that time. We allocated quite a bit of money through that process, and we had consensus to leave, if you will, 1.4 million in the county fund balance. And also my addendum to that was if we can have the 35 to 39,000 for the neighborhood grants. And that's where we left things on that night, knowing that the neighborhood grant item would come forward to this committee tonight. And then the agenda is published and we have 9 items, none of which we've discussed at all. Some of which are for nonprofits and some of which are for internal needed UG items, and they're all needed. So I'm struggling with it. I would like Angel Ferrara to address 2 things. The one being to Commissioner Townsend's questions. I mean, I'm going to struggle. Some of these have a finite dollar amount. You know what she brings forward, we don't even know a dollar amount for, but she made a suggestion of a dollar amount, and you may know. The only thing on here other than those items that she's requested we look at are the all access park benches up to 15,000. And I just am curious, is that a bid we received? Where did we get 15,000?
If
Go ahead. Yes.
I may, as for Angel answers those questions. I just want to also put some context that if you recall, during the budget process, the county side was the weaker side and our fund balance was significantly lower than our target fund balance in the county side. And this is really kind of a hedge against potential future expenses that could arrive in 2025 that could take that fund balance even lower, based on the variable costs that are associated with the jail and other things. So, I mean, that was really the sort of insurance policy in a sense that was being set aside for that. So I just wanted to remind the committee of the context in which that basically $1.5 million was set to the side during that ARPA discussion and the reason for that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I appreciate that clarification. And I know it is confusing that there's revenue replacement, old dollars revenue replacement, there's new revenue replacement. And I will not bore you on all of the regulations because they are quite complex. But I think from our perspective, one of the things we wanted to do is to be able to wrap up our efforts with ARPA funding. We received, almost $82 million. And to be able to clearly articulate where those dollars went. And then we were looking at, for some of these dollars, all those projects that we talked about, those all have to be encumbered by December. So we have a time ticker on that. It's an opportunity to consider these requests or to hold on these requests and see how 25 goes. Because the money was set aside very specifically. If you remember, the sheriff had brought forward additional needs for funding based on increasing contract prices for medical, for food, and for outside contract housing. And we are working with him. We've already had one meeting, and we'll work with the courts and the district attorney on managing the jail population. But we were not able to fully fund his request. And his request was based on real calculations, based on real contracts and real headcount. So we simply didn't have enough funding there and felt that we should take the time to try and manage that issue as best we could. But to Alan's point, these dollars were set aside to the county general fund balance, knowing that that fund balance is nowhere clear or nowhere close to the 25% by policy target. If I recall, we're at about 8%. And we already know that we're going to have an issue present itself if we're not able to manage those costs. as well as then going into the next budget year. If you remember the budget office's long-range forecast, that we're already facing just with normal inflationary increases and contractual pay increases, et cetera, and only with modest property tax growth, so they didn't get overly ambitious, we're already in a deficit position again. So for the county side. So just sharing all of that, that led to our recommendation to set this money aside. But it's also certainly possible to look at these requests or others and to move forward, because we can do that. It's at the commission's pleasure, but looking to try and get some final direction so that we can have a final report out, if you will, on how ARPA funds were ultimately used.
If I could, Commissioner Lavert Murray, Chief Economic Development Advisor, following Ms. Knieven's or Dr. Knieven's comments, the mayor also recognizes, as he advances these requests to you, he recognizes that there are other members of the commission, plural, that would just soon see all of these dollars go into the revenue replacement fund and you spend none of them. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I'm going to have Angel respond to the couple questions I asked you, and then Commissioner Kane.
Sure. Thank you, Angel Ferrara, Director for Parks and Recreation. So to answer Commissioner Townsend's questions, first we'll talk about the Parkwood masonry work. I think staff would need a little bit more time to get a harder number on that. We did get some preliminary quotes over the summer, just for one of the pillars. And so I think it would be worth taking a look and seeing what it would take to redo that entire wall. One pillar is about ballpark $5,000. And then for Boston Daniels, the alternative entrances there on Quindaro. And then I think there's another entrance kind of not the east entrance, but on like 8th in Quindaro. Commissioner Townsend, I think you're familiar. I know we talked about it earlier. I want to say that we might have some engineered estimates, so some harder numbers available for what that would be, but I don't have that information tonight because I know since we have been actively working on that project, we should have some pretty strong numbers on what that work would cost. So I'll stop there to see if that answers those questions before park
It
benches.
helps me, but the other question I had was the benches.
Yes. So your question was, Commissioner Bynum, how did we?
Dollars to get a bench or two that's accessible.
Yeah, so I did provide, put some information together. I think that 15,000 was just a number that was recommended. I did have some time to go back and look at products and get some better information. So one question I think staff would like some clarity on is there's picnic tables that are ADA, and then there's also, I learned a lot, so this was really helpful, but as far as actual ADA benches, I did do some research and there's some information actually on this as well. There's not a true product for an ADA bench. However, there are 4 specifications that are recommended that meet that ADA goal as it relates to benches.
I can tell you just from conversation with Commissioner Burrows that what you're showing us with the no arm on the side type thing is what he was thinking, plus that one, plus the one that had the open slot in the middle.
Okay, so a picnic table?
The picnic
Okay.
table, those are the kinds of things he was thinking of. So, and the conversation was around being able to sit down and then have the bench also be accessible to someone who wasn't mobile. So that's why I think bench, although I love the picnic table, but I guess the reality is, based on what you're showing us, is if we did allocate that 15,000, we could get several somethings that were accessible with that amount of dollars. Now, I know that last time we talked about this, there's prep work and concrete work and other things that add cost, right?
Yep, so it might help to just walk through this briefly if you don't mind. I promise not to take up too much more of the evening, but actually if we can start on page 1, that would be great. So this is just an example of one of the picnic tables that is an ADA product. So you can see there the estimated cost roughly 1,400. And then the estimated cost for concrete is about 3,500. It is a bigger pad because we are extending the pad to be able for a wheelchair to be able to make rotations kind of around the area. So the next product is also another ADA bench. You can see there the price roughly 2,000, and then also a concrete pad estimate. Again, just a different design with that access there in the middle. And then, so what I did learn, which is actually pretty interesting, I'm actually, if you can go to page 5 real quick, and I did work cite this page. So there actually is no ADA requirements as specified for outdoor benches. However, if you look at the bottom on recommendations, there are 4 bullet points that the industry has identified as recommended requirements that would meet ADA. So if you actually go back to page 3. Yep, so this is a pretty standard park bench that we have in many parks. There's actually 2 of these already out at the inclusive playground, and I'll pull that map up here in a second. But if you go back to page 5 and you look at the requirements that are recommended for ADA, the 4th bullet point says benches should include armrest. So that product is meeting recommended requirements to an extent, but does not meet all 4 of those requirements. So I learned a lot and it was really good information and I think it's educational for all of us. There are picnic benches with ADA or picnic tables that have ADA products available. Now the benches get, as you can see, a little tricky. And if you just go to that last page really quick, because I know that there are 2 parks in consideration for this, but that top picture is of Wyandotte County Park, the inclusive playground. Those 2 green dots are actually our existing park benches similar to that brown bench on page 3 that exists today. So any additional, if it's picnic tables or whatever Commissioner Burrows was wanting to see, we can work to make that happen. And then that bottom picture is Rosedale, very large park, but those not knowing maybe where the desire to have those benches would be, staff just took a shot at it, and those green dots would be some proposed locations for some benches or picnic tables.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Commissioner Kane, did you have a,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
I want every one of these folks to get the money. But there's a bigger need than there is money. If I was on one of the other committees and another commission decided to take $455,000 out of what they would consider their pocket, then they're going to want to take $455,000 out of their committee. I'm not, this would have to go to the entire commission. So the entire commission could make a decision. Because I don't think this is fair at all to not have the other ones there. And I understand Gail's passion for, and I don't blame her because she wants, we need to make that park safe. But we also don't know what revenue neutral is going to do to us yet. So we set the money aside for a possible rainy day, and it's kind of raining. You know, so I would rather not move forward with any of this until the entire commission gets to see what their request is. And I think that, you know, like I said, I would be pissed if somebody did this to me, because, and I swear I would go back and say, all right, you know, we need to stick, you know, do the same thing they did to us. So I would rather not do anything on this. And then I guess, I don't know who I'm asking. I don't know if you, the chair, or Alan, or whoever, you know, that the entire commission get to see this, you know, and then maybe make a joint decision together whether they want to fund this one or that one, or they don't want to fund any of them.
No, I would agree with you as far as bringing forward, we have sort of almost a round 2, if you will, of items that could again be a special session. And I will say, I agree with you. The one thing on here that I would support is the benches, but I'm also willing to hold and have the full commission conversation Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't have a full understanding of all of this until ACA House gave the explanation of what was actually happening. And that this was, and then Shelley, or Dr. Knieven, sorry, came up and right back under him and explained that this was, I didn't have the full understanding, this was coming from county fund balance. And I'm kind of on the same wavelength of Commissioner Kane of why are we messing with fire when we just made this big decision? And so I do think that this needs to go back to full commission or a special session, what have you, and have the discussion, because this is playing with fire after making a big decision that we just did.
Well,
So
I'll just say this, when we had the special meeting, it was because we had a list like this generated and brought to us at a commission meeting. And we said, can we have a special meeting to talk about these items? And we did. And I laughed because 2.5 hours later, we agreed on the list, with the exception of adding in these 35,700 in neighborhood grants. And so, yay, but we had the conversation and it was important. And now we have a new list. And you could make an argument for that list or this list that somehow when the original allocation came and we identified the eligible projects and we identified the money we were going to set aside to the nonprofits, and we did a boatload of work creating an application, having the nonprofits submit their application, spending countless hours documenting whether those applications met the ARPA requirements. And it was a lot of work. And we had commissioners put in hours and hours and hours of time reading all of those and ranking those and making those decisions. And what we're doing here is much, much different. And I struggle with this. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask that everybody go back and look at or listen to the end of that special meeting that we had about this, because the administrator, after we were there at least 2+ hours, and someone else as well, and we all agreed to put aside X amount of dollars, I guess on the county side, to support as Madam CFO mentioned, I guess with the intention of shoring up the sheriff's department. But the direction was given at that meeting that we could discuss other requests later. And thus you have Village Initiative coming back, which was a recipient. This is what ARPA money was meant to do. So to Commissioner Kane's point, and I agree, but I would say everybody had the opportunity to come forward with more things. All of that money was not supposed to be saved. Some of these things on here are new, I haven't seen. Some I do recall were discussed that night. Like I said, I discussed money needed to shore up crumbling infrastructure at the parks. That wasn't new. Some of these other things that you see in our packet tonight are, but the point was we are supposed to be trying to figure out how these dollars can be spent. So I would respectfully ask everybody to go back and check, because we were the thought was we could come up later, as we're doing now, with how to spend some of this money. And I thought the number was around 400,000 plus. So not that we have to spend all of it,
Correct.
but like I said, I distinctly remember the access park benches being discussed, the neighborhood grants. I don't recall so much the livable neighborhood home repair, or if there was a discussion, Madam CFO, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I heard that there were other opportunities through CDBG dollars to help that program. But yeah, we're doing now what we should be doing, and everybody had the same charge. That was my interpretation.
Thank you,
So,
Commissioner.
yeah, it would be helpful maybe if some of these things like, was already discussed at the meeting, like the park benches. We could just vote on that, move on what we could move on and do.
Right.
Just a
Commissioner
thought.
Da-
Thank you.
I apologize. Commissioner Davis and then Commissioner Kane.
Thank you. I think, well, let me ask this, Dr. Knieven, so the $1.4 million came out of revenue replacement, meaning that was monies that we initially, the full commission put those ARPA dollars for revenue replacement in the county. Is that where I'm?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So we had recommended back in the special session
Mhm.
that 487,000 stay with the grant match program, which were part of the revenue replacement done back in 21. And then the million go to the county general fund balance, also part of the 21 reclassification. A discussion ensued, and it ended up being the 1,487,000, and all going to the county general fund balance, if that's helpful. And Commissioner Townsend, your recollection on the minor home repair program is correct, that we do a program currently with CDBG and home funds, as do a number of our nonprofit partners in the community.
Gotcha. So, okay. I guess let me ask this question. If we were to encumber these dollars now, this year in 2024 as revenue replacement, could we at another time encumber them in a different way or spend those dollars in a different way in 2025?
And I, again, Shelley Knieven, CFO, I hate to confuse the matter, but I do want to make sure that it's clear. So these dollars, these particular dollars, the answer technically to that is yes. We could keep the money parked in the county general fund balance and make a decision later, just like you could technically with any fund balance money. Okay, so, but with the other allocations that we did, we need all of those dollars, including revenue replacement, to be encumbered by the end of 24. So to make it consistent, our initiative is to try and get everything encumbered by the end of 2024. We have quarterly reports we have to do to the U.S. Treasury accounting for these dollars, and it would allow us to then be able to articulate how all of our funds have been allocated and the expectation of when they will be utilized.
Gotcha. So theoretically, we could encumber the dollars now, call it revenue replacement, and then at another time and I'm bringing up buying time because we did go revenue neutral, and that has really, and I hate that we are being put in this situation because it's simply not fair. No one told me, no one asked me, I didn't get a call or text of, hey, what do you think about the additional remaining ARPA dollars? But now we have these identified partners who, this is great work that I want to be done, but it's being done in a way where we are now kind of the bad guys that are saying, no, you don't get that money, which is just unfair, right? And so the process is not something that I like because we have to manage multiple, right, priorities, and we have to see the whole picture for our community. While for these organizations, I'm sure they're just saying, well, I want my particular dollars, which they should. I don't blame them for it. I want to ask Another question. So we did have some earlier conversations about the nonprofits that did receive, it was that first kind of 17, $18 million. My initial thinking when we were talking about funding more nonprofit activity was taking those unspent nonprofit dollars so that it stays within that category. This is now kind of muddying up, what is revenue replacement? And now we have nonprofits, now we have other expenses. All of that to say, where are we at right now as far as those encumbered nonprofit dollars? Are there any additional dollars that we could reallocate this year?
Shelley Knieven, CFO. So, we went through a pretty thorough process with each one of the subrecipients that went through the process that Commissioner Bynum was talking about. And we have spend down plans with all of them. 9 of them have already completed, which was not the case back in May. So 9 of them have completed their work. The rest of them, about 11 others, have spend down plans that are in place. And we feel confident that they will spend their funding as originally intended, as awarded by the commission, with the exception of one of them reduced their ask from say 380 something to 330, and it was 57,000 and some change that was put into the reallocation consideration. Okay, so we did, if you will, a sweep of all of the different categories that we felt were not going to be used. A lot of those were in the immediate needs category for public health, not just the health department, but there was all kinds of things in there. But also there was, if you remember, the park department had a couple projects. They said they didn't feel like that was a good use of the funding because it wouldn't be able to advance the project enough with all the discussion we had. But of those subrecipients, it was 57,000 and some change, and that was put into the pool for reallocation. So it depends on how you look at it, if it was already reallocated through that process, or if it's part of what was put to the fund balance. Either way, it was 57,000. All the other entities have spend down plans that we are monitoring, working really closely with them so they get their initiative complete.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane. Certainly.
My back's killing me. I'd like to make the motion for the $15,000 for the park benches. Move.
To move that one
Se-
forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that item? Yes, Dr. Knieven.
Just for clarity's sake, so the neighborhood grants was fast tracked. So that'll be on the agenda coming up. Would you want this fast tracked so they go together?
Fast track it.
Commissioner Townsend,
Up. Alan's got a question.
do you agree with the fast track on the motion, Commissioner Townsend?
Yes, that's fine.
Alan?
Alan House, System Administrator, just for a little clarity, I think because there are 2 park benches that currently exist at Wyandotte County Park, we talking about the Rosedale Park benches. We're talking about sort of picnic tables. Are we talking about something up
I'm
to?
going to speak from what I recall from Commissioner Burrow's comments at the special meeting. He was specifically talking about the inclusive play park at Wyandotte County Park.
Right.
That's what he was referencing. Clerk Sparks.
Thank you, Monica Sparks, Unified Government Clerk. There was also a request for a bench at another park, and I can pull those minutes and make sure that everyone has that information.
Would we need to modify 15,000 for the park benches at Wyandotte County Park and also whatever other park was mentioned? All right. We're good on that. Roll call on that motion. Okay, Roll call, please.
Roll call, Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Commissioner King.
As I stated before, I would love to see all these programs in need get the monies. But I respectfully request that we have not a standing, not a standing committee, special session for all the commissioners to have input on what's going on, because I think that'd be the fairest thing to do. And that's my motion.
Commissioner Ramirez.
To clarify, so are we tabling the remainder of the requests
Yes.
until we hold a special session?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's your motion.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alan.
Alan House, System Administrator. I just wanted to also, a little bit of context, because some of the members weren't here for that special session. So, you know, there was some urgency around. That's why it was put on the calendar for September 4th, because there is a runway that's required for staff to actually go out and get these things under contract. There is a requirement under the federal procurement for things to go out to RFP. So, you know, that was now, I say another month has gone by. So part of the push on that was to close the door on decisions around
And we do it.
funding allocation.
Meeting in October?
I mean, to me, we need to have the mayor work with the administrator to schedule these meetings as soon as possible. And I don't mean to be argumentative or dense, but I just heard you say that we have parked these dollars in the county general fund and therefore fulfilled our current ARPA allocation requirements.
For these specific dollars, that is true. There's not as much urgency as there was with all the other dollars that were reallocated, which has urgency. However, having said that, we have to report to the US Treasury how we've used these dollars. And if there's an intention to use them in a different way than having them in the general fund balance, then we need to have some direction on that. We've got a little more latitude on timing, but we need some direction on that.
Okay. And what is the runway on that? Because I think we might intend to use these dollars, at least some of them, based on a discussion with the full commission in a way that's different than general fund balance. What would that runway look like?
I would stick with the December 24.
Okay.
For decisions.
Okay.
Okay, because we have to do quarterly reports. We obviously won't have a decision for what's due as of end of September, but our next quarterly report will be the end of December. And then we'll be in our ramp down mode of what the spend down plan is for the balance of the dollars. So getting some direction on that's really would be very much preferred.
Okay, we can do it. We can do it. Alan?
Sorry, Alan House. So you just.
That's my mom voice. You're about to get
I
in
know, I
trouble.
know.
Go ahead.
Well, just listening to the comments early in the discussion, so I just wanted, are we soliciting the full commission on what they would like to see? And I mean, I think Commissioner Kane, you were saying there's items on here, and if you'd known, you'd have put your own stuff in. Just wanted to understand, so the expectation in terms of, is this going back out to full commission to get everybody's input and list, and then go through that in a special meeting or in full commission? And kind of what does that look like? Or is it, you know, just this list?
My opinion? Is, maybe direction from the administrator's office, along with Dr. Knieven, to the commission, that if you have a thing or someone has asked you about a thing, because I'm still a little bit, I still find the mixture of nonprofit and UG requests problematic. is not striking me in a good way. You know, here's the list. If you have a different idea, we need to know it by this date. And we need a notion of a dollar amount because we're having a special session on this date. And after that, we're not talking about it anymore. Now that was my mom voice. Commissioner Townsend. Please.
I could barely hear you, but I think, okay, is there currently a motion on the floor? And if so, what is it?
Well, clerk. I thought we had a motion to hold a special session on all remaining items.
Yes, there is a motion to table the remaining items for a special meeting.
So we do have a motion and a second. Commissioner, if you're thinking we should vote and then discuss.
Okay, well, and Assistant Administrator House also addressed the question that I was gonna wanted to have brought forward. Is it just this list? Is it open to all? Because I maintain if we go back and listen to that, the end of the previous meeting, that was the invitation there to come forward with additional requests. So for everybody, if you go back and listen to that meeting, we were talking about, we can figure this out later.
Okay, then I
so
will say, go ahead.
I understand, there's a motion. I guess I was too slow. With that appeal, I would like to see Village Initiative, who was a subrecipient, clearly in track with ARPA spending purposes in a disadvantaged census tract, has come forward now. They've adjusted their request to 110,000. They did what they were charged to do, what they said they were going to do. But seeing as how that is quite a bit of money with what we have to work with here, I would like to see thus, at least address their request tonight, even if it's just for half of what they've asked. We know they can perform. When we went to the public about how ARPA dollars would be spent, housing was one of the top 3 requests for expenditures and how to expend that money. So that's what we've got here. I would really like to see their application addressed tonight too, even if it's not for all that they've asked for. So
I appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
My personal response to that is that I would ask the clerk to transcribe the end of the special meeting and get that in the hands of every commissioner, because not every commissioner was present. So not every commissioner knew that maybe that door was open for now's the time for your requests. We have a motion and a second on the floor that I'd like to have a vote on. Yes.
Commissioner Monica Sparks, Unified Government Clerk. I believe those minutes are going to be in your upcoming full commission packet that you'll be receiving this week.
Really?
If not, we will get those to you.
Even if they are, my request would be that you pull the section that Commissioner Townsend's talking about, and that we have a communication to the commissioners, probably from the administrator and the CFO, that says, here's the reference from the end of the special session. Here's the request. Here's what's on the list right now. And here's the date by which we need to hear from you if you want something different to happen and what's been put in front of us. That's my request to staff to move this along. And I think at this point I will call for roll call on this motion.
Roll call. Townsend,
No.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, and just for clarity, that motion was that we're going to hold a special session.
Correct.
Thank Thank you. Any other business in front of us tonight? Commissioner Davis.
Just wanted to say to the folks that did apply, that did kind of put their name in. It's unfortunate that things were communicated in this way. And so please do not take our vote as not honoring or not wanting to invest in that particular way. I think we are trying to balance so many priorities that, quite frankly, it doesn't really do justice, right? Just given the amount of demand. And so I would hope that people would see that we're trying to do the best that we can. And this is in no way, shape, or form. It is not a dig at any of the wonderful organizations that were listed. Hopefully we can come up with a solution in due time. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. I absolutely agree. And Mr. George, thank you for being here all night long. And as to Commissioner Davis's point and Commissioner Townsend, it's not over till it's over. So we didn't say no to you, just so you know. We just didn't say yes yet. Any other business? Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And now I can't remember what that was, what I was going to ask about. So I'll take the opportunity to thank Mr. George for coming out and being present. I could see him on camera. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for stepping in and filling in for us as a voting member tonight. I do appreciate that. Is there a motion for adjournment?
David, second.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, Townsend,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. We're adjourned.